Just before we start, could we start the live stream, please?
Set the live stream. Sorry, thank you, Sarah. Okay, thank you. And live stream, we're done. And apologies, Sarah.
No apologies, Provost.
No apologies. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. I can't see any. Thank you. Item.
Provost.
Sorry, hand about. Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yes, Provost. Just my membership of the IJB Health Board and membership of Tayside contracts, but as a council appointments, I will stay and remain in the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Are there any others I may have missed? No. Okay, if we could now go on to item 3, the revenue and capital outturn for 2021 and 2022. We have to note the latest positions which were reported to the policy on the 1st of February 2022, report 19/2022 and 20/2022 respectively. Is that noted? Thank you. Item number 4, the council plan, finance and change plan and workforce plan. I would like to ask, first of all, our Chief Executive, Mrs. Margot Williamson, to speak on this. Mrs. Williamson.
Good afternoon, members. A very important day for all of us, and never has democracy been more important than it is in the world as it stands today. I think it's very important to see today's budget in context of planning, performance and reporting. Over the past 5 years, we have continually looked strategically at all our services, the services we deliver for the council, and we continue to focus on our vision for Angus to be a great place to live, to work and to visit. That is at the forefront of everything that we do. As you know, it's been an incredibly demanding time, particularly the last 2 years, and we've had to all change the way we go about our daily lives. As a council, we've continued to deliver our services to the people of Angus, and we've worked with our partners to ensure hardship and harm are minimised. Much of this has been possible because we have plans, single agency and multi-agency working in partnership plans, and an incredibly committed workforce who have continued to focus their attention on our economy, our people and our place. Our council plan today outlines how our values as a council will support us recover from the pandemic as an organisation, but more importantly as a county. Our consistent and persistent focus on our priorities has served us well during this time, and as outlined, it includes ambitious targets for our future. Already the learning from some of our digital offerings and reduction in travelling will go some way to meet our climate change targets, a concern we must all be mindful of. I am grateful to you, the elected members of this council, for the support and the care you have shown our staff over the course of this year. It is our officer-member relationships which has enabled us to make the progress we have in supporting the people of Angus. I commend this report to you. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Mrs. Williamson. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. I'm delighted to present our council plan, finance and change plan and our workforce plan. Throughout the period of this council, we have consistently focused on our vision, making Angus a great place to live, work and visit. This administration has set 4 clear priorities, and we've worked tirelessly with officers to achieve them. Our economy, our people, our places, our towns, villages and neighbourhoods, our business, making the council as efficient and effective as possible. And that's not been easy, simply because of the amount of cuts we have had to make and savings, as they are so called. This plan outlines our next steps, but also takes into consideration our learning of the pandemic and how we deliver services and how that has changed. Over the course of our administration, we have worked to simplify what we aim to do and have worked with others to create our strategy. This tells everyone our aims to get best value for the council and serves as a guide for all the changes and improvements we make. It tells the people of Angus we want to eliminate child poverty. It tells the people we want to reduce our impact on our climate. It tells the people we want to raise and improve the well-being of our communities. And it tells the people we want to create stronger partnerships. This plan outlines for members and the public our performance and ambitious targets we set for ourselves over the coming year. There are many areas I could outline, but I want to pick out 2 particular areas that matter to me as a leader of this council. Firstly, the Mercury programme. The UK government provided Angus with 26.5 million as part of the Two Cities deal. It was for Angus to use to fund this and grow our economy. This administration, working with officers, designed alongside business and partners a programme that is already attracting a wide range of interest in low carbon, sustainable business, and this will see the launch of Scotland's very first drone port in Montrose. May I also add that the first phase of Hospital Field House in Arbroath has been completed, and I can assure you the new restaurant is well worth a visit. We will also fund a significant agri-tech project which will see a Centre for Agricultural Sustainable Innovation Centre, otherwise known as CASI, here in Angus. Working with our farmers, this has been made possible. The best of public-private innovation you will see anywhere. But secondly, recycling. As an administration, not only did we plan to deliver the best council for recycling in Scotland, we did deliver it. Through redesigning our waste centres and keeping them open to collect recycling waste, we have seen Angus move to first place for performance in Scotland. Almost 58% of our waste in Angus is now recycled. This is how we improve things for our young people. And it's those young people who are fighting to save the planet and encourage and considerate and sustainable behaviours. Finally, I want to commend to you our workforce action plan. We must continue to focus on our workforce and ensure it is the right size and scope to meet the demands of a modern council. We are proud to proactively attract young people to council life. The workforce plan presents our strategy for retaining and recruiting and investing in our workforce to continue to make Angus, as I have already said, a great place to live, work and visit. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fairweather there. Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Provost, thank you very much. The leader has said many of the things that I was going to say, but I would like to support and comment on these plans from a process point of view, over the last 5 years, this administration, working very closely and harmoniously with officers, have introduced these interrelated plans of the council plan, the finance plan, and the workforce plan. It has produced an alignment of priorities and activities right the way through the council, which has actually made possible many we have subsequently achieved. We're a democratic process, as the Chief Executive said, never was that more important to demonstrate. The administration set the objectives. It was then working with officers that we worked to produce plans on delivering of those objectives. And the objectives were introduced into 4 themes, and the leader has been through those 4 themes. Angus to be a go-to place for business. Well, tremendous success there. Maximising inclusiveness. The whole way that this council handled the COVID response and the partnerships with VAA and many others, community councils, certainly up in Kirriemuir and Dean and other areas of Angus, tremendous inclusiveness and partnership working. Communities to be strong and led by citizens. Well, many examples of that, but none more so than waste management, where if you don't have the cooperation of the citizens, then your waste management policies simply will not work. An Angus Council to be efficient and effective. And there I always come back to the rather dry comment of zero-based budgeting, the way officers looked at all the work that we were going to do and the objectives we set and worked from the baseline upwards to see what resources were required. That isn't cuts, that's improving productivity. And it was superbly done over the last 5 years and has laid a strong platform for the future. Most importantly, each year we publicise as a council our achievements against our objectives. And this council debates those. And thereby we can see whether we have actually been adding value or we have not. This cohesive planning and management has been the basis of our improving performance and delivery of services over the last 5 years, and I couldn't wish to be more complimentary about it. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. Douglas, Councillor King.
Yes, Provost. I got a question on a specific item. It's on page 64 under place and planning. In the middle of the page, it says about Arbroath Harbour. The project is currently being scoped out and plans will be brought forward to fit the savings timetable. In 2022-23, that's the forthcoming year, the savings will be achieved by the completion of the project to review Arbroath Harbour delivery model. It then goes on to explain that about the maintenance costs and the fact that the harbour is a legal entity of the council and it will require an act of parliament to change it. But the sting is in the tail. However, this proposal is to undertake a review of alternative models of managing and operating Arbroath Harbour, along with a full assessment of corresponding revenue and capital costs. Well, I, as the convener of the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee, who is the person responsible for liaising with the harbour users, know nothing at all about this. No one has had the courtesy to come along and say to me, we're going to look at how we can possibly manage the harbour in another way. I know that there are models, different models in different parts of the country. I'm quite well aware of that. But nobody has come to me and said, we wish to look at this. Would somebody like to tell me just exactly what you are planning, exactly what you are going to look at, and what that means for the harbour users, and what that means for the town of Arbroath?
Councillor King, the Chief Executive is just going to reply there.
Thanks, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Proctor, you come back in? No.
Your hand was up there. I thought
Yeah.
you wanted to Councillor King.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor King. I wasn't aware that you had no knowledge of this. All I can say is, please accept my apology, and we'll get that information to you and make sure that you're fully involved.
Okay.
A further question? If this is going to require an act of Parliament, how can we have these savings being taken in the current year? It's going to take longer than that to get an act of Parliament through. Never mind getting with persuading the harbour users it's going to be of benefit to them. That could actually take a lot longer.
Councillor King, as I said, I mean, we can only look into this. I know it was in the review of the change programme last year that came before council, but I can give you the specific details after speaking to our officers.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Williamson. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor King. Councillor Speed.
Can you hear me?
Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, apologies, Provost. My mic didn't seem to be going off. Yeah, with inflation rates climbing, I'm just wondering how Angus Council will reduce costs to assist with child poverty. For example, low-paid staff being asked to work from home and heat houses. And my query is, you know, isn't this contradictory of this very policy of the council? Also, with regards to barriers to access, the council are, you know,
Speed.
yeah.
Councillor Speed. One
Yeah.
question.
Okay, one.
Let me explain. You can ask questions like that once we have gone through the budget motion. Okay. So
Okay. Then.
you're asking the question, one question at a time, or one question only, but that start the budget setting process, not at the moment. Okay,
Okay,
that information that was given out by on item 4 is for information, and the recommendations from this report will then be moved in paragraph 5 below, okay, which is the actual budget. Okay.
Okay.
Order, Provost.
Thank you,
Okay, thank
Provost.
you.
Point of order.
Right, that's no problem. Let's move on now to item 5. If you could bring your hand in, Councillor Speed. Councillor Hand, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, a point of order, Provost. Because this is a budget setting meeting, there is no restriction on councillors having one question.
Yes, but that we are on about when we actually come to the budget setting part of the meeting. You could ask a question on every item if you so wish. Okay, that's fair enough. But at the moment we want to get on to the budget setting, which is laid out in item 5. Okay, in item 5. And I'd like to move on to item 5 now, if you wouldn't mind. Item 5 is
point of order, Provost. I have my hand up. Can I make a question? Can I make a comment of what's been said so far?
Councillor Boyd, I didn't see your hand. I would have acknowledged it.
No problems, Councillor Proctor or Provost. My apologies. Can I make a comment though?
Make a comment, but the comments really, Councillor Boyd, should come out in when we deal with the actual budget, when we go through the things as explaining to Councillor Hand, you know, line by line. That's when the comments come out. And if you wouldn't mind, just wait until we actually get to that part of the meeting, and then you can make your comments and ask your question as required. Okay.
That's no problem at all, Provost. Thank you very much.
Okay, back to item 5, the provisional revenue and capital budgets, 2022-23 and beyond. There will be a verbal update and outcome of the meeting that was held this morning on the 3rd of March, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Sharon Faulkner to give a brief summary. Ms. Faulkner.
Thank you, Provost. The Central Consultative Committee met earlier today and considered the Council Plan, the Finance and Change Plan and the Workforce Plan, along with report numbers 7122, 6222 and 6422 on the Provisional Revenue Budget for 2022 and 2023. Unison referred to the further year of challenges of COVID-19 and to the services provided by staff on behalf of the Council, Angus Live, Tayside Valuation Joint Board, and also the private social care providers contracted to the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership. Unison paid tribute and commended the staff for their work in the previous years and into 2022. Unison highlighted and raised concerns that the local government pay increase for staff in 2021-22, a significant proportion of the workforce, was 2% behind that of NHS colleagues, and emphasised that the workforce deserved better than this. Unison also referred to the proposals around agile and workplace consultation and stressed that the mood in sectors of the workforce is not good. Disappointment was also expressed in the lack of support to the NOW campaign. Unison recognised and raised concern to the challenges of financial sustainability and the current model of funding to local government. Given the sustained cuts to services in Angus since 2013-14 up to and including 21-22, Unison, both locally and nationally, has rung alarm bells over such deep and extensive cuts. COSLA's president also acknowledged that local government is at breaking point over funding cuts. Unison urged elected members to stand up for their local services and workforce. Unison highlighted the significant funding gaps, the change programme savings, including the recent engagement undertaken in regards to the agile and workforce change proposals, and stressed the frustration as a result. Emphasising the cuts of 7.5 million, Unison stated that staff should be made aware of where these savings and cuts would fall. Unison referred to the Angus Alive 3-year cuts to the funding for services and expressed disappointment and raised the importance that these services and facilities were in place to support and improve individuals' mental health, well-being, physical fitness and enjoyment. Unison also referred to the National Care Service. The scope and the remit of the proposed service had changed and raised the ongoing issues for social care in relation to the recruitment and retention of staff. Unison and Unite, in conjunction with COSLA, stressed the importance of not breaking up the local government workforce, particularly at this critical time in recovery from the pandemic, and urged elected members to support the local delivery. Unison referred to the highlighted ASN £260,000 saving for 2022-23 and highlighted that Angus support staff were paid less in comparison to adjoining local authorities and urged members to consider and address pay differences. Unite concurred with the Unison statement and emphasised all stood up for their workers. In reference to the recent Agile and Workforce Change consultation, they highlighted that there had been considerable concerns raised to these proposals. The committee thanked union representatives for their input and attendance and noted their statements. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. And I ask a colleague to note this. Is this noted?
Good.
Okay.
Noted.
I now go to 5B, verbal update, outcome of the special meeting of the Children and Learning Committee, which was held this morning at 10:30 a.m. And I'll ask Mrs. Kelly McIntosh if she could give a brief summary of the meeting that was held earlier on this morning.
Thank you, Provost. Meeting of the Children and Learning Committee earlier today, the proposed budget efficiencies in respect of the Education and Lifelong Learning Directorate were noted and discussed. Members asked questions and made comments relating to the provision of free fruit in schools, school meal provision and efforts to increase uptake of that, the storage of ASN equipment, our support staff workforce and in particular their levels of pay, how the proposed budget efficiencies may impact the children and young people of Angus, and the overall reduction to core funding for local authorities whilst recognising the increase in funding for education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I ask colleagues to note the comments made by Mrs. McIntosh. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the finance convener, Salmon, to deal with items from Charlie through to the end, paragraph 6. Thank you. Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Provost, and welcome colleagues to this budget meeting. COVID-19 has continued to play a major part in the lives of Angus citizens in the last 12 months and provided very challenging conditions for Angus Council operationally. Angus Council went into the pandemic in a stronger financial position than many other Scottish councils. This administration has had a strong and experienced hand at the financial tiller since May 2017 and Councillor Angus McMillan-Douglas, the previous finance convener. Councillor McMillan-Douglas has always been very clear about the importance of sound finances, and I will be taking the same approach today. We said we would prioritise expenditure to meet our objectives. We did this by challenging expenditure where it looked unnecessary or expensive. We worked with officers to improve the effectiveness of Angus Council so every pound of expenditure would provide better value for the residents of Angus. The message has been a smaller, highly prioritised Angus Council run in the most effective way. This approach allowed us to build up reserves for a rainy day, and never was this more necessary for our residents than this year, a year when many needed to turn to us for support. Without these reserves balancing today's budget, we would be in an extremely difficult and an inevitable council tax would be much higher. With two new factors on the horizon, namely the Ukrainian situation, these are adding further pressures to family finances. My budget today is aimed at supporting Angus citizens, especially those in need of an extra helping hand. My budget will be balanced and will protect the vital services Angus citizens use day and daily and will focus on three major areas of public priority. 1. Value for money for Angus citizens in the shape of a low council tax rise. 2. Giving a helping hand to residents in greatest need. I have listened to the views expressed in the pre-budget consultation and intend to protect and invest in residents' priorities as far as I can. And 3. A major capital investment of £11 million in the Angus Roads network to tackle the scourge of potholes. A message we hear loud and clear from residents on a weekly basis. Causel's assessment of the Scottish Government budget settlement, even after the additional 120 million which was announced, is that the grant settlement represents a real terms cut in local government funding of 251 million. That is bad enough. We are funded at a level of around £26 per head short of the Scottish average. If we were only funded at the Scottish average, we would be receiving an extra 3 million for this year, 3 million more for our roads, our children's services, our local services. This consistent underfunding of the people of Angus is very disappointing, to say the least. This is compounded by the ring fencing and direction given to how any grant uplifts can be used. As the report for today's meeting shows, out of a £23 million increase in grant, Angus Council only has 1.1 million which can be put towards our long list of unavoidable budget pressures. I will now move to the Council plan, which includes 4 strategic objectives which our budget supports. 1. Economy. Angus is a go-to place to do business. The Tay Cities deal was projected to bring in 350 million of additional resources to the Tay Cities region. The deal aims to create 6,000 jobs and bring a further £400 million into the region. The Angus Fund of £26.5 million will be used to stimulate the Mercury programme, Angus's visionary £1 billion partnership programme, across the Tay Cities region between government, public, private and community sectors. 1 year plus on, projects and programmes funded through the Tay Cities region deal are already delivering growth and driving investment into the area. In Arbroath, Hospital Field has delivered its first phase with the cafe and gardens open to the public, and the high-speed digital project in rural areas will be delivered by the end of March. Business cases and agreements have been made for the Cassie and Forfar, Brecon Rural Mobility Hub and the development of the 04 site in Montrose that includes the drone project. The engineering partnership has just been approved by both governments, which will support learning in all our schools as well as Dundee and Angus College to prepare for the jobs of the future. We are also looking to secure a 5G network in Montrose supporting both the Port Authority and the growing offshore wind sector. This 5G network will be the first outside a city in Scotland. What a fantastic achievement for this council to pull off, always punching above its weight and delivering for Angus. And there's more good news to come. 2. People to maximise inclusion and reduce inequalities. Child poverty. The Child Poverty Local Action Report is now in its 4th year of publication and is a joint responsibility between Angus Council and NHS Tayside. These reports are underpinned with the views and the data from local communities, which is something we aim to increase for the future. To ensure the views of local people are further embedded in this work, there will be a service design programme delivered to identify key areas of work and develop actions to ensure our resources are making the greatest impact on the people experiencing poverty. Examples of our progress include that we have continued our Glen Clova and Glen Isla projects and recently agreed to put welfare rights officers into our schools. Both projects aim specifically at supporting vulnerable children and young people and reducing poverty. Our continued funding of $180,000 to the Holiday Food and Fun project will continue support for Angus children during the school holidays. Move on to number 3, which is place our communities to be strong, resilient and led by citizens. I'm going to touch on recycling. In recent years, we have consistently been one of the top performing councils in Scotland for household recycling, and the latest published figures for 2020 showed Angus were the top performing local authority in Scotland. Of the 52,000 tonnes of household waste generated during 2020 in Angus, 30,000 tonnes were recycled, a massive 57.9%. The redesign and retention of all 7 borough recycling centres by this administration shows we made the right call and had the vision to aim high. You don't become the #1 recycling council in Scotland overnight. It takes years. And all the credit must go to the citizens of Angus for embracing recycling. It's our citizens who are the #1 recyclers. So a big thanks to each and every one of them, and to use the council leader's favourite phrase, the result is stunning. Another positive move was the recently signed agreement with Dundee Council to allow residents from Moneyfeith and Sidlow Ward to use Dundee Council waste centres. This shows real partnership working in action, and a big thanks to council officers for their excellent negotiating skills. And there's more. Another breaking news story last week was Angus Council's waste team winning the Coslet Award for the Service Innovation and Improvement category of the Citizens Awards for our introduction of the fixed 4-day working week for our waste collection teams. The awards are local authority success in Scotland and recognise best practice across all local authorities. There were more than 170 applications entered, but it was our waste services entry that shone through and was selected as the overall winner for service delivery and innovation. This is an award-winning council in action, so a big thanks to our residents and staff. We have also agreed our CCAP aimed at reducing the impacts of climate change, promoted active travel and continued to make significant investment in our housing programme. We are encouraging local community leadership and there are curriculum duties that were formally carried out by the council. 100,000 to create self-help winter maintenance by offering communities to grit their local area, with additional grit bins and spreading equipment as well as additional grit bins all over Angus. The 130,000 Community Hall Resilience Centre money to create resilience points at strategic locations to support our communities and allow our communities communities to support themselves. 1,000 community funding to support local groups run community toilets in different Angus locations, with the potential for more locations to be identified. 4. Our council. Angus Council to be efficient and effective. We want Angus Council to continually improve its efficiency and effectiveness. Over the last 4 years, our change programme and wider budget strategy has bridged the cumulative funding gap of £36.4 million. This is equal to 11.6% of the Council's 22-23 revenue budget of £313 million. When you consider that around 45% of our costs are incurred in education and children's services, from which it's very difficult to make any savings, this is a stunning achievement. And perhaps even more stunning, it has been achieved while protecting the most vital services for our citizens. Our administration and officers must take credit for this. We were told this would be impossible to achieve, but we have achieved it. This efficiency improvement has allowed our council to manage the challenges presented by COVID-19 much better than would otherwise have been the case. But the bad news is that we anticipate reductions in local authority funding for core, which is existing services, will continue moving forward, making the future financial stability of this council extremely difficult. Never has the funding of the Scottish councils been in such a precarious position. When I recently met with Scottish Government ministers, I proposed the need to consider at least a 3-year local government grant settlement so councils can plan years ahead instead of limping year by year. I did receive a positive response, so time will tell and my successor may be able to plan ahead for the medium term. I must say though, I don't envy the job of the next finance convener after the May elections. But as a responsible finance convener, I do intend to leave this individual with a strong reserves and contingency position to begin their difficult journey. Reserves of £8.75 million will remain available, and I am creating a £100,000 contingency reserve to support possible inflation risks in 22-23. So while creating a balanced and sustainable budget today, this administration is being responsible in giving the next administration a helping hand for next year's budget. I now move to the main features of the budget. The nominal value of funding of Angus Council by the Scottish Government for 22-23 is an estimated £249.542 million. This is an increase of 10% over the level of funding for 21-22. However, when ring-fence funding for Scottish Government projects is subtracted, the increase in funding is reduced to £1.117 million, or 0.5%. The UK Consumer Price Index measured inflation rose by 7.5% in the 12 months to January 22. Therefore, the Scottish Government's funding of Angus Council's core existing services for 22-23 fell in real terms. However, rise by more than the increase in funding for core services we have received. For example, salaries, which are negotiated nationally and are therefore out with the control of Angus Council. These are expected by more than 0.5%. There are also huge risks around energy and general inflation. These are the same pressures that our citizens will face. The resultant funding gap arising from budget pressures in the Scottish Government measures is £13.9 million per annum. We propose to meet this shortfall for 2022-23 by taking. There is general agreement with the objective of keeping council tax as low as possible, as it is a hard tax for many households to pay. I must point out that it is not clear whether the £2.5 million of additional government funding announced at stage 2 will be built into the baseline of council funding for forthcoming years. We've been told it's a one-off. If it's a one-off, this risks causing Angus Council to have to recoup the £2.5 million next year. We are aware that COSLA is trying to negotiate a satisfactory outcome with the government on this, but we are confident that keeping council tax as low as possible for 22-23 is the right policy to help our citizens recover from the economic consequences of COVID-19 and the upcoming cost of living crisis. The good news in Angus is that due to the prudent management of our budget in recent years, citizens of Angus will continue to enjoy for 22-23 one of the lowest council tax rates in Scotland. We must also remember is that Angus council taxpayers are paying less than all their neighbours in Dundee, Aberdeenshire and Perth and Kinross, and last year paid the second lowest council tax in mainland Scotland. Our ambition today is to remain as the second lowest in mainland Scotland. I'll now move to the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership. Particularly well over the last 3 years in managing its budget. It has managed the COVID-19 pandemic and lived within the extra funding provided by the Scottish Government. AHSCP is better placed than most of its comparators across Scotland. For 22-23, Angus Council will fund the AHSCP by £65.3 million. This is the sum funded last year, plus Angus's estimated share of the £575.9 million ring-fence national funding for this. The partnership will fund its budget issues by making efficiency savings. And I'd like to make clear that while Angus Council fees will rise 2.5%, the request to raise fees to 2.9% is an ASCP request from officers, and it will help the partnership manage their cost pressures. I now move to Angus Alive. Angus Alive is funded through a combination of commercial income, providing services like access to swimming pools, gyms and theatres, which contributes 58% of the total income, plus a management fee from Angus Council contributing the balancing 42%. Angus Alive has been hard hit by COVID, as has had to close its facilities for a large part of the year and relied previously on furlough to cover much of its staff costs. Angus Council funding for 22-123 million and will require Angus Alive to find savings to fund increases in staff costs of 0.285 million. The challenge for 22-23 would occur if, despite the vaccine programme, Angus Alive was not able to fully reopen all its income generating facilities. I believe that major challenges lie ahead for the Angus Alive board, and the main one is maximising the income generation of the leisure centres and providing services that Angus citizens require at prices residents can afford. Health and wellbeing is now a major part of residents' lives, and Angus Alive could capitalise on this if they develop the correct menu. The Angus Alive board and management need to grasp the commercialisation nettle very quickly. We are working with them to make sure that any commercial opportunity is explored to the fullest, as they are subject to the same financial challenge as Angus Council. As budgets reduce, new models need to be developed to deliver the services our communities rely on. I move to a summary of other budget measures to bridge the budget gap. Change programme savings of 6.8 million, as explained in the Finance and Change programme. This includes savings which the AHSCP will require to make. Review of charges, 2.5 increase. Some exceptions, social care charges, have a different approach as I explained earlier, and this is expected to raise 86,000 extra income. On-street parking and public toilets will remain free to support our citizens and high street retailers. Off-street car parking charges will remain free until the 31st of March 2023. The green bin charge is frozen for the third year as announced in last year's budget at £30. An increased council tax shield, the equivalent of 498 new houses, expected to raise an extra 1,000. The more attractive we make Angus to live in, the more this will rise. This leaves us with a funding gap of 6.45 million, of which 0.875 million is for one-off budget issues. We intend to fund the remaining funding gap of 5.575 million from a combination of reserves. Sorry, messages are coming up. Get rid of them. We intend to fund most of this shortfall from our uncommitted reserves. These are all reserves built up during the life of this administration. They were built up in the case of a rainy day. Now is the time to responsibly deploy them to support Angus residents with as low a council tax rise as possible. Some service improvements investments this administration intend to make. Service improvements investments in the budget. School inflation linked to RPI 720,000. School transport inflation 105,000. The Holiday Food and Fun Project 180,000 to support our children. Additional costs for residential care placements of 200,000 supporting our vulnerable young children. The continuation of the Glenisla project at 96,000 supporting women and children in Angus. And inflation on winter maintenance and bus service provision, meaning no council service cuts to routes, supporting our communities. Keeping car parking charges in Angus free. As we recover from COVID-19, we must do all we can to help our economy recover, with the beneficial effect this will have on jobs and living standards. Therefore, we intend to keep car parking free until at least the spring of 2023. We shall fund this out of reserves. The Angus high streets are still in COVID recovery mode, and this administration, as previously announced, are committed to free parking in Angus. Any further changes will be one for the newly elected councillors to make after this May's elections. In addition to these budget issues, I want to confirm that all ring-fenced monies the Scottish Government are providing for specific initiatives, etc., including the 3 million for additional teachers and support staff, will be used for its intended purpose. This brings me to our roads. We shall preserve good quality roads and winter maintenance and preventative gully cleaning as previously announced, and this additional work will be covered by the new roads maintenance capital plan I will announce shortly. So I'll now move on to our capital plan. You will see that there is 176 million total planned capital investment in Angus over our 5-year plan. This administration is fully committed to the new 50 million to the new Moneyfeith High School project, Angus Council's largest ever capital investment, and this will bring massive benefits to the community of the south of Angus. Some of the other new projects within the figures are upgrades to secondary school toilets in Arbroath, Montrose and Kirriemuir, 300,000, 250,000 for schools information and communication equipment, 200,000 for cyber security zero trust architecture, 120,000 for IT network infrastructure renewal programme, 300,000 for parks infrastructure repair and renewals. The Arbroath Places for Everyone project, 1.19 million, with Procurement Authority report coming to the March 10th full council to commence the project delivery process, and 11 million structure capitalised maintenance. Angus roads and pavement users have made it loud and clear they wish this council to invest more in maintenance, namely potholes. This came out of the budget consultation and the petition submitted to this council. This administration is committed to improved roads maintenance and road safety, and therefore today I'm asking the council to agree to a new 6-year investment strategy. In Angus, we have 1,130 miles or 1,818 kilometres of roads linking our coastline to our glens. This network, which links our communities, is essential for everyday life, for our businesses and for our residents. We know nationally that there has been a 28% reduction in expenditure on roads. We also know from the National Condition Survey that we are just in the top 10 of the 32 councils in terms of roads condition. We are also in the third of councils that are the lowest spending in the roads infrastructure. This balance of relatively good, better condition and comparatively low spend shows we compare well with other councils. However, we know that over 30% of our roads network needs attention or investigation, and we know that our roads team do a sterling job of maintaining our roads within the limited budgets they have available to them. I announced in September last year that I wished to support the funding of roads, and that at that time the council agreed a £1 million boost for reactive repairs to help address some of the roads defects ahead of the winter. I also intimated at that time I was looking for an ambitious 11 million for roads maintenance. Today I'm putting forward a plan for next year and potentially beyond to provide an initial 3 million for roads maintenance. This will allow the team to deliver an extra third of the planned surface dressing programme next year and increase the roads and footway resurfacing programme. This will include a mix of rural and town routes across the county, dealing with some of our poorer infrastructure. This £3 million is the first step in a bigger programme valued at £11 million, which has been set out in my capital plan proposals administration to deliver. This funding will allow the road service to plan future investment in the road's assets, including road safety and street lighting. Officers will assess the network as they do each year as we emerge out of roads that most need investment are prioritised and develop a programme of repairs to maintain our transport network as far as the funding allows. Now, I'm going to sign off with 3 additional but massively important projects, or rabbits out of the hat, as Councillor Duff likes to call them, for the towns and residents which these proposals will benefit. The COVID pandemic has taught us all many things, but one important one I personally benefited from was our green open spaces and walking or running through the splash park area at Montrose Seafront daily. This is why I work tirelessly to extend the opening hours of the public toilets at all major parks in Angus, as well as supporting new ones at Forfar Loch and delivering a new changing place toilet at the West Links, while also making all public toilets in Angus free. I could see their importance as part of outdoor life. Health and well-being are so important to us all, and what could be better than open space with the physical and mental health benefits it brings us all. So it got me thinking about Forfar and Brecon and why this council should invest in creating themed play parks for each of these localities. We have themed play parks on the coast, but no real comparators in our inland area, with the exception of the excellent Peter Pan in Kirriemuir. Therefore, today I am proposing to lay the first building block for a new themed play park in Forfar and Brecon by allocating £100,000 to each project in the capital plan. With future monies coming to Angus Council from the Scottish Government Play Park funding, the challenge will be for the new administration to pick up the baton and engage with the public to design and create further funding opportunities to deliver these projects. In doing this, I'm also not going to forget about Angus's biggest village, Letham, where as part of the new Angus Council social housing project, a new play park, I'm proposing to allocate £50,000 to help create a new feature play park. This is additional to the funding from the HRA, and will now deliver a slightly larger play park for Letham. Project 2. As part of the budget setting process, I unaligned opposition colleagues and was delighted that 5 out of the 6 were happy to engage with me. Disappointingly, Councillor Boyd indicated in a rather grumpy email that he didn't want me, but preferred to stick with the SNP shadow budget group. So my next announcement is a hybrid of my discussions with the 5 colleagues and a personal belief to support an important area, our children, families and justice directorate. This administration remains committed to improving services for people in Angus who need extra support. I am proud of our record of significant investment across a range of relevant services, including our children, families and justice directorate. So in developing this budget, I was delighted to be able to identify a further £80,000 to support this area of the Council's responsibility. I met with Social Work Officer to discuss where that investment could be best targeted. To invest that additional £80,000 in our frontline social work provision for children with disabilities, building on the administration's significant investment in this area last year. Investment will support the creation of an additional permanent qualified social worker post within the Children and Disabilities team, increasing the amount of time our practitioners can spend with individual children and ensuring that they have access to the right support at the right time. The funding will also fund additional staffing capacity to support the availability of revision and direct work with children with disabilities. Give the service further flexibility to enhance the provision of local community mental health services for children and young people, building on existing funding streams and services. This new investment is something I personally feel very strongly about. I know it will make a huge difference to the lives of many Angus children and to the lives of their families. I truly believe there will be an incalculable benefit to children and their families from this new investment. Children are the future, and together with their parents and carers, we must support and nurture them to grow and develop. They are the next generation of leaders. They are our future and the future of our communities. And I would hope no councillor today will vote against this vital investment. I move to my last announcement in my budget plans. So this has been in my personal budget plans since I took over from Councillor Macmillan Douglas, and oddly in my head it was titled Project X. So please don't ask why it was titled Project X, but this is another significant investment in an area I believe to be of a growing priority. This administration has strived to reverse the closure of public toilets by previous administrations and looked to invest and improve by making them free, extending opening hours, and recently making a significant investment in a changing place toilet at the West Links in Arbroath. I am sure we are all blown away by the presentation from Fiona Souter, the Inclusive Community Director of the charity PAMIS, at the full council meeting back in December 21. She spoke passionately and informatively on why changing place toilets are so important, the benefits they bring, and the need to expand these facilities over Angus, and by doing this, how life-changing it would be. While some colleagues like to ask questions and make comments, they don't always bring forward workable solutions. I like to take action when I can, so today my proposal is to provide a solution and deliver. The new changing place toilet at the West Links in Arbroath is the first part of a new council strategy to create accessible toilets for all. Fiona Souter's contribution only reinforces my belief that this council needs to make further investment in changing place toilets. The new convener of communities will inherit a proposed report to identify and consult on areas for changing place toilets in Angus. So today I am proposing to allocate £100,000 to ensure that there is immediate funding available to deliver on this administration's commitment to toilets accessible for all. And again, I would hope that this would be fully agreed by all colleagues today. Can I just ask you to please note my 3 additional priority announcements will be funded from uncommitted reserves. I now move to the final piece in the jigsaw. So the final piece in the jigsaw is the council tax rate, and probably the most important piece of news our citizens want to know. Reaching this decision has been extremely difficult this year, as a balance has to be found in protecting vital council services, protecting the financial stability of Angus Council by retaining adequate council reserves, and most importantly, applying a council tax rate that doesn't have a massive financial impact on council residents. Having taken all these factors into consideration, the administration group believe a rate of 2.95% increase creates a balance of all these factors. This equates to a 68.5 pence per week rise on a Band D rate. I accept that nobody likes to pay more for services, but to ensure this council has the ability to deliver the vital services we use daily, whether it be education, roads, household waste collection, recycling centres, play parks, cemeteries, trading standards, adult and children's mental health services, and the many other services this council provides to our communities. I'm therefore going to ask our citizens to pay a small council tax increase, which we have kept as low as possible. Like households, we must be able to pay all our bills and stay financially viable to allow this council to continue to be of service to all its residents. I'm now going to make a quick summary and move the motion. Thanks to prudent management by this administration and officers, Angus Council entered the COVID-19 pandemic in a stronger position than did many others, and this has helped us preserve and protect services for our citizens. The theme of this budget is to look forward and help the people of Angus to recover from COVID-19, survive the cost of living crisis, and build a better future for. To do this, we are keeping our council tax as the second lowest in May, keeping council house rents low, keeping parking free in Angus until we recover sufficiently from the pandemic, We are continuing our major effort to encourage businesses to locate into Angus to generate jobs and spending power. We are continuing to encourage the provision of high-speed broadband in rural as well as 5G in urban areas. We are continuing to encourage the best education for young people and are strengthening our social care team, in part because of the stresses to young people, and we are investing record amounts to further improve 1,300 miles of roads, which are the social and business arteries of our county. This is a financial off by the Director of Finance and protects and invests in priority services and helps create a sustainable future for Angus Council moving forward. I'm pleased to move the motion. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Sam. Before we move on to after your seconder, I just want to make a point of clarification. Councillor Salmon's motion covers items 4, not as I said before, 5. So items 4 to 6 is covered by, and that's all the motion completed. Yep. Councillor McMillan Douglas, you second.
Thank you, Provost. It gives me huge pleasure to second this excellent budget. We all know the context. Severe and continuing cuts in Scottish Government funding of local authorities. We know this to be true. It is not just this council that is saying it. Councils of all political persuasions across all of Scotland are saying it, and COSLA are saying that the present position of funding of local authorities is unsustainable. Set against that background, Councillor Salmond has managed to balance our budget, maintain our reserves over the life of this administration, and protect the council taxpayer and the council house rent payer. This is a fantastic feat. And he has managed to go into great detail, showing huge work in funding other ways of helping hard-pressed residents of Angus. Holiday, Food and Fun Project, continuing the Glen Clover and Glen Isla projects to protect vulnerable children and women, reducing the impacts of climate change, promoting self-help winter maintenance, helping community hall resilience projects, improving toilets and making them free, protecting Angus Alive so that swimming pools, etc. are reopening. Car parking will remain until at least the end of March next year. Green bin charges are frozen. School transport is protected. Bus services generally are protected. Plus a huge £11 million investment into maintaining our roads and pavements. Plus the huge Monifeith High School investment, a groundbreaking investment in South Angus. Plus a commitment to changing places toilets and new play parks for Forfar and Brecon. This is a superb budget, set in the most difficult of circumstances. It gives me huge pleasure to second it. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor. Go to item 7 and call upon Councillor Duff to move the SNP budget proposals as in terms of standing order 8(5). Councillor Duff, you have a seconder, Councillor Duff? Councillor Duff?
Yeah. Thank you, Provost. Just unmuting myself. Yes, I think Councillor Whiteside is seconding to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, carry on, Councillor Duff.
Okay, thank you, Provost. once again, I'd like to thank those that have participated in preparing this budget and the assistance I've been given. Support from officers within the Finance Directorate has, as ever, been very good, with the usual standards of impartiality, professionalism and sound advice. Other senior officers have assisted on specific points. I would like to thank my fellow members of the Shadow Budget Group, Councillor Brays, Whiteside and Boyd. Councillor Boyd obviously left us before we produced an alternative SNP budget. A special thanks go to Stephen Mill and Jill Rennie, who provided close support to produce our SNP budget. And I'd like to thank all members of the SNP group for helping with suggestions and amendments. As this is the last budget being prepared by this administration, it's perhaps appropriate to give a critique of their 5 years in power before I move on to our alternative budget. We've been given regular speeches about this administration's scrutiny and sound judgment by a succession of finance spokespersons. However, after 5 years, the medium-term financial position tells a different story. Despite the efforts of Councillor Salmond and his administration, we need to save another 34.9 million over the next 2 years. It's clearly concerned about Angus's financial position, and the budget is not going to help hugely. The financial gap this year is larger than anticipated, and that's because the change plan has delivered significantly less this year than we expected it to do. I think something around £4 million less. We've seen energy costs increase. We have seen the national insurance surcharge imposed by the UK government, and we're anticipating larger than expected pay rises. So it's constructive to consider the conduct of the administration over the past 5 years. Change of personnel has not helped. The administration started with 18 members, and the numbers have fluctuated like the waves in the sea, and we're now down to 14 members. The first leader, Councillor Miles, lasted a year. Despite many mishaps and threats to resign, Councillor Fairweather is probably going to struggle over the line in May. Councillor Fairweather left administration in September 2017 over the handling of the recycling centre MOG. He then made entreaties to join the SNP group with some fellow travellers. That he returned to the fold and then became leader of the administration is certainly testament to his chutzpah. We've had 3 children learning conveners, 2 community conveners, 3 economic development spokespersons and 2 deputy provosts. We have had Bingate, Standards Commission sanctions, members leaving the administration and returning, and 2 members resigning after their social media aliases were exposed by the Courier newspaper. We've had bullying allegations leading to 2 of their younger members resigning, including their only female member. It's a sorry record and one Angus should be ashamed of. I will remind elected members that we had a perfectly functioning cross-party budget group called the PBSG. That was essentially binned by the administration, and as a result we've had to set up a separate parallel shadow budget group. That takes additional time and effort from officers and seems to me not necessary. In the previous administration, it worked well. We had 4 SNP members and we had councillors Boyd, McLaren, Proctor and latterly Councillor Cheap, who took part in that group. The strongest critics of the previous administration, Councillor Salmond, Fairweather, Miles and May, did not attend the group. They were offered positions, but they refused to do so. They preferred to carp from the sidelines, and they didn't produce an alternative budget. So that was a shame. That was disposed of. I want to turn now to the concerning practice of the administration amending their own papers, which
Councillor Duff, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but what you've said really got no bearing on the budget, and I think we've got.
I think it does, Provost, and we've listened to a party political broadcast by the administration.
I'm sorry to disagree with it. That's all historic. And what we're looking at is the budget. Now I'd ask you if you could please move on and deal with your budget proposal, if you wouldn't mind it. Thank you.
Well, I think it is relevant, Provost, because I think I'll skip a bit, but I think we've got a serious issue where reports are amended by the administration, and we saw that most egregiously at the rent setting meeting, where it was clear that the officer view and the tenant's view was that the 2% rent rise was an appropriate one. And Councillor Cheap asked Councillor Boyd how much this was costing the council. And Councillor Boyd couldn't answer that question. He looked to his finance officers behind him and said, "This is not for me."
Point of order. Sorry, point of order, Councillor Duff. It wasn't myself.
Apologies. It was Councillor Cheap who asked the question. Absolutely, yes.
But it wasn't directed to me. It was directed, I think, to Councillor Salmond, who was doing his party political broadcast at that point in time.
Yeah,
gentlemen, colleagues, let's stop that here and now, and let us get back on to the budget. Okay. Now I think we've had the historics. Let's get on, Councillor Duff, to what your budget proposals are. And I would be grateful if you could carry on with that now. Forget the historics. I'm sorry, Councillor Duff. I think what you're saying is quite erroneous, and officers here are advising me that we should be back on track with your budget. And I would ask you to do that.
I will get on with the budget, Provost, but I think you've allowed the administration to spend a lot of time with what I would call a party political broadcast on behalf of the last 5 years. And when I've tried to draw issues with some of the things that have happened, to hear it, which I don't think is fair. However, I'm not going to argue with you. I will get on with the next part of my budget, and this is relevant. I wanted to have a word about Angus Alive. As you'll know, I'm one of the 4 members serving on the board of our Sport Leisure Alio, Angus Alive. It was set up by the previous SNP administration in December 2015. Angus is amongst 25 local authorities to have such an alio, and the main drivers behind this move were to allow Angus Council to enjoy the fiscal advantages of running an arm's length body, set up as a charity to deliver sporting, leisure and cultural services to the citizens of Angus. So Angus was very much on one of the latter entries into this field, with councils like Glasgow, Edinburgh and Perth having such bodies for decades. The principal financial advantages of such an alio are relief on non-domestic occupied by Angus Alive to deliver charitable activities, and there are also VAT advantages. There are also greater opportunities to tap into external funding, and Angus Alive has benefited from such support. For example, to fund mobile library van replacements, upgrading and enhancing the Signal Tower Museum in Arbroath, and cooperation with the Macmillan Cancer Charity to provide support services in our libraries. The financial savings from the non-domestic rate issue aspect is approximately 1.5 million per annum, and that's a substantial sum for an organisation with a turnover of £9 million, where 85% of the expenditure is on staff costs. I would say also that Angus Alive has been able to be more agile in exploiting technology and making organisational changes than a larger organisation such as Angus Council. And in my opinion, that is another advantage of a sport, leisure, culture alio. I'll turn now to Angus Alive's financial performance over the past few years and the Council's change programme. Over the period 2017 to 2020, Angus Alive has seen its management fee from Angus Council reduced by 1.058 million, again a substantial reduction. Our change programme, and I refer you to, I think it's page 51, shows that what is expected of our sport, leisure, cultural alio over the next 3 years in terms of management fee reductions. For 22-23, £285,000, 23-24, £210,000, and 24-25, £500,000. So to be clear, a further reduction of £995,000 on top of savings of 1.058 million already banked for 18-19 to 2021. So in round numbers, £2 million of savings for an organisation with a £9 million turnover. That's approximately 22% of the expenditure. We don't intend to amend the change programme in this budget. With a change of administration due in May, we would anticipate that the change plan will be reset then. However, let there be no doubt that the current savings proposed by Angus Council will have a serious impact on the services that Angus Alive is in a position to be able to deliver to the public across Angus. I'm conscious that the Council is working on a transformation plan with Angus Alive. However, to date, there has been a scarcity of detail on that project. I will point out that the administration support for Angus Alive, picking up the themes that I had mentioned earlier, have been somewhat poor. The charity was initially set up with 4 council directors, 2 from the administration and 2 from the opposition. At the statutory meeting in 2017, the administration insisted in taking 3 places. And in the following 5 years, we have had 7 members of the administration, Councillors Brown, Cheap, Davey, Moore, Proctor, Wan and Lumgear, entering through a revolving door to serve as directors, and the SNP group has provided 2, myself and Councillor Devine, who joined me, more to provide some semblance of gender balance rather than political balance. 2 of the admin directors resigned under a cloud, and many spent too little time on the board to understand the organisation or make any useful contribution. And once again, we've seen the dysfunctional nature of the administration in not taking a conscientious view of its responsibilities. Another huge issue during this administration is the long-running saga of Lochside Leisure Centre. This has sapped a huge amount of officer time and energy, and a fundamental reason behind this is the clear lack of leadership from the administration. At one crucial council meeting, we had
That's not relevant to the budget.
I think it is relevant to.
It's not, and come on, let's get on with the budget, and never mind going down the wee rabbit hole. If you don't mind.
Okay, I'll move on to another thing which I want to raise with you. One final issue that's had a long-term consequence was the decision taken in the early years of the administration to dispense with the services of consultants EY. The council was told in February of 2017 that EY were doing an essential service and were highly valued by senior officers. They were removed in May 2017. Now, I'll give you the thought experiment. Would we have made some of the mistakes we'd made if we'd had EY on board? I would suggest the parking charges situation, which has not been our best hour. We spent a lot of money on machines, and basically the project never delivered anything like the original hope, which was, if I remember, was £1 million in surplus. I think the best we've done is between £200,000 and £300,000. So I think that project might have been steered. We might have been steered away from that if we had kept EY on board.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but is EY really relevant to your amendment to the budget?
Okay, I'll move on. Has been under financial challenge since 2013. In the previous administration, the SNP administration, £35 million was saved. Since 2018, another £43 million has been saved by the change plan. However, despite the heroic efforts of officers with the change programme, our cost-saving measures are now running into sand, and the future cost savings in the council plan will not be easily achieved. The medium-term financial plan indicates, as I've said before, we need almost 35 million saved over the next 2 financial years. For me, the last 5 years have been a wasted period with no strategic changes coming from the administration, all challenges shirked, problems swept under the carpet, and heads firmly in the sand. It will fall on the future council to grasp the nettle and put the council back on a secure and sustainable future. I'll now turn to the SNP revenue budget. I will mention the main items that we have accepted, and it may well be similar to what Councillor Salmond has. If that's the case, I apologise, but I'm clear that there's no rabbits coming out of the hat from the SNP group. All of this was published in our budget a couple of weeks ago. So on education and learning, we'll accept the increase for school transport inflation, 105,000. There's the unitary charge. We have no choice there. That's £720,000. We will also accept the holiday food and fund. It's a vital and much needed measure to tackle poverty and support our most vulnerable families. This is receiving one-off support for this year, £180,000. I would want to mention the music tuition and school clothing grants. Now, these are funded, but if there is a demand increase in above of that, I think we would support use of contingency. I think that is a genuine contingency, and the revenue contingency is about £4 million. So we would want to use that if we got claims in excess of the money that we have got ring fenced for that. Children's, families and justice, increase of budget for fostering, adoption, kinship and continuing care, 60,000, and the looked after children demand, which I think is 100,000 ongoing and 100,000 one-off. There's 3% increase in third-party costs of 31,000, and we would also continue to support the very valuable Glen Clover project on a one-off basis, which is £96,000. In vibrant communities, there's a £34,000 cost on red diesel. Again, no choice about that. And we would also continue the free use of public toilets, £10,000, an important COVID recovery measure, and thanks to the good work done by Councillor Durno on this item. On infrastructure, we would put 68,000 towards planned maintenance of council buildings. I think a stitch in time saves 9. We would agree on the professional asset fees, 22,000 in assets and 147,000 in roads and transport. We would put 75,000 towards the front of curb sweeping. Winter maintenance, again, we would meet the inflationary demand there of 96,000, and gully clearances, £50,000, and road drainage clearance, £50,000. A number of these items were in our budget last year, and we would have made them as continuing items and built into the budget. As you recall, last year, Councillor Salmond produced those as one-off. So we would put these in as continuing items. We would put 43,000 to local bus transport. That's essentially to deal with inflation. And like Councillor Salmond, we would suspend parking charges for another year, 378,000. The roads maintenance items that I've mentioned, we had them in there last year. Strategic policy and public sector reform, there is nothing there. And under digital enablement, information technology, human resources and business, we would agree with the Microsoft licensing costs, 113, telephony, 100,000 and 78,000 as a one-off, SAN migration, 50,000 and the digital office subscription of £26,000. And we would agree with the digital reprographics units, 33,000 ask. That gives a total budget issues recognised of 875,000 as one-offs and a core budget increase of £1.873 million on an ongoing basis. The SNP spending proposals give you a net expenditure of 313,667. The amount to be met from council tax after subtracting the government grant element is £64.125 million. We're providing £100,000 towards the change fund, and we're putting £1.225 million to cope with inflationary pressures, which seem to be increasing by the day: energy, general inflation, Brexit, etc. That's significantly more than Councillor Salmond has put into that reserve. I think that's a prudent approach, and I think more prudent than the administration. So we will utilise reserves of 6.295 to fund our budget proposals. This leaves the Council with unassigned reserves of £3 million to allow the strategy of deploying £2 million of reserves next year and £1 million in the following year. The SNP Group is proposing to balance its budget by increasing council tax by 3%. These measures will deliver a balanced budget and start to address the structural issues with our funding. It's worth providing some context on the council tax increases, and an increase of 3% is £33.62 per month for a 10-month period, or 70 pence per week. So I think that is a modest increase, and it's clearly something that we need to look at our funding, because the council is under a lot of pressure. I think our view is that the people of Angus want the council to provide good services, and these can't be provided in a sustainable fashion without adequate funding. We cannot continue to spend more than we get in income, and we have been doing that for several years. That isn't changing this year. Our reserves are running out, and we will shortly be under the water if we continue with this current administration's reckless approach. Boasting we have the lowest council tax rate and the lowest council house rents in Scotland falls on hollow ground if we're heading for financial trouble and we cannot adequately maintain our houses in a proper fashion. I'll move now on to the capital plan. Historically, the capital plan has allowed an overage of 10% based on available resources. This was to acknowledge project slippage. From recent experience, the slippage in projects has exceeded 10%, and we are once again increasing this overage to 12.5%. We believe this is a responsible approach that recognises recent experience. We note that this year the administration are following the lead of the SNP Group, and they're also proposing a 12.5% overage. It has taken them 5 years. Why now? We note the administration plans to invest 7.75 million in roads over the next 5 years. Once again, we could ask, why now? Our roads have been deteriorating for the past 5 years due to underinvestment. We note Mr Cochrane's views on the sums required to return our roads to a steady state of good repair. The SNP Group believes that the entire capital plan will be reviewed after the May election. And we will consider our roads priorities at that point. It's worth pointing out that while money is set aside for this much needed work, nothing substantial is set aside in the administration budget to progress the A90 link road. And I'll turn to that project now. The A90 link road has been in the council's capital plan for some time. It's worth briefly recapping the history of this project. The original concept was to run a road from Montrose to the Stracathro junction on the A90 to allow HGV traffic easy access to north-south routes. This would also remove HGV traffic travelling to Montrose from the streets of Brechin. The project was handed over to a firm of roads consultants. There were originally about 20 options. This was reduced to 13, then 5, and at the last elected member update in June 2021, we were left with 4 routes. We were also promised a report on this project in September of 21, which has never appeared. All 4 routes terminated at the Marykirk Bridge on the Aberdeen-Angus border. This bridge is, the consultant helpfully pointed out to us that there was an issue as the bridge was old, built in 1814, that's 1 year before the Battle of Waterloo. On the north side, there's an area which is regularly floods. We can add that Marykirk has a narrow main street, which is not suited to additional HGV traffic, and it's difficult to see how any of the route options still on the table will greatly reduce HGV traffic in Brechin. The cost of these proposals, from what the consultant told us in June, were in the sort of 30 to 50 million pound envelope. Yes, a new crossing of the North Esk River at Marykirk, nor a bypass for that village. These issues could obviously be shared with the council if they were agreeable. The funding of this project is problematic. The council capital plan as a £15 million project, 1-5, with 10 million potentially being provided by Tay Cities Deal. And if you refer to the February 2021 report presented to Tay City Deal Joint Board, that is paper 5.2, Tay City Deal Angus Fund Outline Business Case, the Angus Fund of 26.5 million, of which you've heard earlier, only 2.6 million is devoted to transport projects, and that included both a railhead and the link road. What is clear is council has spent over £750,000 on this project, mainly on consultant fees. Proposed routes do not meet the original design requirements, and we have a serious issue with Marykirk. Indeed, the consultant report identified several bridges in the Angus-Aberdeenshire area that are old and present a risk to efficient and sustainable road transport. These are clearly cross-border issues and require a regional approach together with appropriate regional transport bodies and neighbouring councils. It's the view of the SNP group that Angus Council should stop spending any more money on this project now, and after the forthcoming election carry out a full review of this project, its purpose and its funding. Our present view is that this project is not financially affordable to Angus Council. Therefore, the SNP group believes that we should remove this project from the capital plan, place it until this review is completed in the new term. On advice from officers, there are certain ongoing commitments, and to fund the review, we have left £116,000 in the capital plan for 22 to 23 to allow that. Having declared a climate emergency, and to establish a fund to support green technologies, both within the council and in support of projects within the private sector, it's now becoming a centre of offshore wind generation, and we need to encourage and embed high-value engineering and design jobs in our communities. So we are pounds towards this project, the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan. And I do note, despite what was said by the administration spokesperson about climate change, there is nothing in Councillor Salmon's budget that seems to address climate change at all. We're assigning £2 million supplementary money for Tay City Deal to support future projects. We have proposed to spend £100,000 on changing places toilets. We want vibrant communities to develop a needs-based plan to provide this type of facility across Angus on a planned basis. We also would like to put some money to net zero heating. We need to move away from natural gas for heating properties, buildings, houses, etc. It's, I think, a little bit unclear what technology we should go to. I think government advice is not very helpful. And we want to set up a pilot scheme, £150,000 to investigate alternative ways of heating the school estate and public-private buildings. It's a small sum, but it's important pioneering work. Finally, review of recycling with the approval of access for the Monifieth and Sidlaw residents to Dundee City Council recycling centres. It's to propose appraisal for recycling centres in South Angus, what provision we should have. It's believed that this can be done mainly in-house by officers. £1,000 is included in case some external resource is required. And it would be proposed that we carry out this work after May 22, after the election. Okay, I'm happy to present the SNP budget to Council. Its watchword is responsibly acknowledging our precarious financial position. We need to ensure that the Council is left in a sustainable position. I think there's much work to be done after 5 years of inaction by this administration. I'd like to formally move the SNP alternative budget and ask for your support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Councillor Whiteside, you are happy you're seconding Councillor Duff's motion.
Thank you, Provic. I'd also like to echo Bill's thanks to Stephen Millen, Jill Rennie for all their work. It's very much appreciated. And also to Councillor Braze and Councillor Boyd for their contribution. There's no doubt that once again this year tough decisions are required by councils, not just in Angus but right across the country. However, Councillor Salmond once again bemoans the drop in core funding whilst conveniently ignoring the benefits to Angus of the additional ring-fenced money received as part of the budget settlement. As you can see from today's papers, the total revenue grant allocation from the Scottish Government is over 10% higher than last year. That's an increase of nearly £23 million. Now, while it's true that the majority of the increase is ring-fenced, we can't pretend that it doesn't exist. And as we heard this morning from the Director of Education and Lifelong Learning, she emphasised that her department's budget's actually 4.2% higher. This is funding that provides significant benefits to the people of Angus, so let's please acknowledge these benefits. From the removal of curriculum and music tuition charges, the expansion of free school meals, including holiday meal provision, child bridging payments, teachers' induction scheme, additional teachers and support staff, school clothing grant, and more. Not to mention the significant additional funding for Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, including mental health funding, free personal nursing care, care at home, the Carers Act, additional social work capacity, and I could go on. Without the help of the above initiatives, many of our residents' lives would be adversely affected. However, it's also clear that families across Angus are struggling to manage their budgets, which are under pressure from many directions, not least the removal of the £20 uplift for recipients of universal credit by the government at Westminster. Herein lies the problem. We must find a balance between protecting the budgets of our hard-pressed families while continuing to fund the council's services that those families rely on. The policy favoured by the current administration of relying heavily on reserves to balance the books year after year will ultimately lead to a point where services can simply no longer be maintained. We've heard of the huge savings required over the next 2 years, and the choices made today are vital to avoid exacerbating the situation even further. And crucially, that is why our pledges are built into the budget and do not rely on the one-off use of reserves. The SNP group will not take the people for Angus for fools. A council tax freeze, for example, in election year would be nothing more than a poorly thought through bribe to voters, who will suffer the consequences through cuts to services in future years. Now, Councillor Duff has rightly pointed out that the entire capital plan should be thoroughly reviewed following the elections in May. This should be with a particular emphasis on procurement to ensure the best value is received. Touching on our fund of £2 million to support green technologies and the £150,000 for a pilot scheme towards net zero heating, following COP26 we should be in no doubt that we all need to move faster and be more ambitious in our targets towards a more sustainable council, and this is certainly a priority of the SNP group. Once again, I have to mention additional Scottish Government funding that's not part of the core capital budget, but which will help us to continue to improve the lives of Angus residents. This includes place-based funding and play park funding, and this will enable us to move forward initially with projects such as Carnoustie Links footpath and Curryden footpaths, as well as new play equipment for the Blue Seaway in Monifieth, with further funding and projects to follow in the coming years. Therefore, I do feel that Salmon's announcements around play parks are nothing more than gimmicks. Let's not forget also the huge capital investment in recent years made through ring-fenced funding, which delivered the amazing expansion of free, quality early years education for all our preschool children. The value of this cannot be underestimated, both in terms of the immediate benefits for our families and expanded workforce, but also, crucially, in the long-term benefits it will bring towards the reduction in the poverty-related attainment gap. By all means, acknowledge the challenges faced by the Council in balancing the budget again this year, a challenge that shouldn't be underestimated. But please, never forget the benefits gained through targeted ring-fenced funding either. The SNP Group feel our position is a responsible one in the current circumstances, and I urge you to please support our budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whiteside. We're going to break now into groups and have an adjournment of 20 minutes. But before you go, I just want to advise you that there will be comparison papers. Sarah Forsyth is going to send you comparison papers to everybody so you can actually look and see the comparison between the motion and put out by Councillor Salmond and the amendment put out by Councillor Duff. I make it 14:41. So if we talk about a minute past 3, 15:01, and that is our time to resume. And then after that, we'll have questions and comments. Councillor Boyd.
You beat me to it. That's what I was about to ask in your final four says, is that the time when we'll be able to make either comments or questions? But thank you clarified it then, Ronnie.
When you come back, when you've had a chance to compare, then we'll do questions and comments, and then we will summarise and then vote on either the budget or the motion or the amendment. Okay?
Thank you for that.
Right, 41. See you back at 15:01. Thank you. meeting. Before we do, I just want to start the live stream again. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, colleagues, so we now have questions and comments on the motion or the amendment. Hang on a minute. Sorry, I have a wee problem with my computer. Councillor Cheap.
Thank you, Provost. I wasn't expecting to be first, but thank you. I found it all interesting, but out of it all, I've got to say I'm concerned that at the level of the council tax increase chosen by both the administration and the SNP, I would have preferred us to be bolder here.
Is this a question, Councillor Cheap?
So I thought you said it was. Sorry, Provost, I thought you said questions and comments.
Oh, well, just a question for comments later. So
okay, well, I'll come back in that case and come back later with a comment in that case.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, mine's is you did ask questions or comments. Mine's is a comment, Provost.
I'll leave it till later, Councillor Fairweather, if you don't mind, and I'll take your comment in time. Councillor Hans, question.
Yeah, Provost, I actually have quite a few questions, but I just
want one question at the moment, and then we'll come back. Okay, so everybody gets a chance.
Can I just get clarification from you as well? You said it's on the basis of the print, but we've not actually had an opportunity to ask questions of the papers that are in item 5. I've actually got a couple of questions that relate to the papers. So at what point do we cover the papers? Not getting to do so.
Great. No, ask your question now, Councillor Hans. Thank you.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, my first question then, and I hope I can come back to other ones later on then, it's item 5G, and it's in terms of the Angus Health and Social Care paper, and at paragraph 4.2, sorry, when I was reading this, I didn't have page numbers, so I don't know what page number, but it's talking about the outreach support for people with learning disabilities in Angus, and it's mentioning the fact that over COVID that was really helpful and welcome. However, they're talking about looking at future planning for that service, and that there may be the necessity to charge for that, and in terms of the travel costs. What I'm wondering is, will there be a similar approach taken as there has been with the funding of home care, and assess needs in terms of a 3-tier funding level for that, taking into account the sort of rurality of some of the areas within Angus and the sort of semi-rural area as well as the towns? Because it strikes me, if we don't take that approach, then people with a learning disability up the Glens or in some of the more rural parts of Moneyfief and Sidlaw and other wards, yet they're going to miss out because their funding package won't last as long as it would be if somebody was in the town and having to pay the transport costs for outreach workers.
Thank you, Councillor Hand. Johnny Berry, is it about to answer maybe that question?
Yeah, thank you. And I will try and answer that question. Although, to be honest, I don't think I can answer it in the way that Councillor Hans would wish me to. I think, Councillor Hans, that is something that I think in that paragraph that you're looking at, if we get to this point and that becomes something that's a feature of a long run, we will look at that in the future, which I think that's the paragraph you're referring to. So I think what I would say is I would take your comments into account. They do seem completely reasonable. So when we get to that, hopefully we can build that into our thinking.
Okay, Councillor Hand.
That's fine. Do you want my other questions, or will I just come back in later?
Well, let's give Councillor Braze and a couple of others a shot and come back. Okay. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I do have a question on the A90 Link Road idea. And it looks like it's going to be another £500,000 to be spent on this idea without even putting a spade in the ground, as far as I can make out. We have a £15 million way down in the admin budget. We have consultants telling us it'll actually cost £30 to £50 million to take it not to the A90, but to the county line at this pre-Waterloo bridge. And I'm really concerned about this. It just seems to be a fantasy, because I can't find anything in Aberdeenshire Council's budget suggesting that they're going to take the road from the North West River all the way up to the A90 to join at Longskirk through a single street village. Single lane anyway. So I'm just wondering what if officers can tell us what provision there is in the Aberdeenshire Council budget and where they're going with this. Really, it should be your finance spokesperson answers this.
Well, thanks very much for Councillor Braze. I know exactly what you're on. I attended the study day, etc. myself, and it's been discussed at TACTRAN. And I'm maybe going to ask maybe Mr. Scott, Walter Scott, maybe could give us some update and advice on that.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, Councillor Braze, the report in terms of the member briefing has highlighted that there are particular issues with the remaining options. These are being appraised in terms of their affordability, and a report will be forthcoming at some stage in terms of that. They have highlighted there are particular issues with the existing route and the intention to link it into existing infrastructure, and that does include infrastructure which is outside of Angus. And whilst preliminary discussions have been had with Aberdeenshire on the potential impact of those on their location and on their assets, it is not something at this stage we have fully developed. So the intention would be to return with a report at some stage to highlight those issues and to identify what the options were for us to proceed and therefore to make the right choice to ensure that we are picking up the issues of the new infrastructure that's required and the maintenance of the existing infrastructure which is in Aberdeenshire.
Yes, so am I right in thinking that Aberdeenshire has no provision whatsoever in their budget for taking the road from Merricott to the A90? And yet
through you, Provost,
£1.2 million is going to be spent on this before they're even made any sort of commitment at all.
Through you, Provost, it's from Aberdeenshire.
Before you do, I'd just like to say it's maybe unfair asking you to know what Aberdeen Council are up to.
Which is Provost, which is what I was going to say. I can't comment on what allowances Aberdeenshire have made in terms of their capital planning. All I can say is that we have had preliminary and follow-up discussions with them on the needs for that particular route, and that does include assets and bridges on their side of the border, but it would be for them to include within their capital plan.
Well, it's looking to me like a link road to absolutely nowhere.
Well, okay, Councillor Braze, I think I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure we've got trust in our officers to sort it out in due course and get to some place. Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I would like to ask Councillor Salmond about the £80,000 for children's services. Now, I'm sure Catherine Lindsay is it. But to me, 80,000 isn't exactly a huge amount to be working with children with disabilities and mental health and pay a staff member, etc. But my real concern would be this looks like a one-off. So what happens next year? This is an extra budgetary demand for next year. And we know that next year is going to be so difficult. I mean, we gave a lot last time round to children's services, and I think that was very much appreciated. I hope this just isn't a kind of one-off idea, because it has to be long-term. This really has to be long-term.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Devine. Councillor Salmond?
Yeah, so Councillor Devine, if it's a long-term measure, have I got your vote then?
I'm saying that it could be, you talk about prudent.
Well, I'm going to ask Catherine.
Now, this is a one-off thing, which you are, at the end of this year, another 80,000 will have to be found for this, if not more.
I think it's important I ask Catherine Lindsay to explain this so that everybody has total clarity around this and there's no confusion. So if Mrs. Lindsay's about, I think it'd be helpful if Catherine explained all this and gave reassurance. Please, Catherine.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come in. So, as I think Councillor Salmond referred to in his budget speech, he and I discussed what useful kind of work I could put an additional £80,000 to in the area of children with disabilities, children's mental health and well-being. So the proposal, as I understand it, was for recurring funding, but perhaps I have picked that up incorrectly. My anticipation would be that I would use that money to create one full-time permanent social work post in the Children with Disabilities team, so that adds to our existing establishment. The additional remaining monies would be used to support both the operational costs of Strathmore Avenue, the Respite Centre for Children with Disabilities, and my estimate would be that I would use around £17,000 towards that particular endeavour, and then the remaining balance we would be putting towards the wider pot of money that's currently available to support children's mental health and well-being across Angus. And we've got a range of different projects that are currently bidding in for funding to support local delivery across all our towns and rural areas. I hope that answers the question, Councillor Devine.
Well, I hope it is ongoing recurring funding, Catherine. I really do.
So I've got your vote now, Councillor Devine, yeah?
Right, thank you very much. That's it. Councillor King? Councillor King?
Sorry, Provost, my microphone didn't want to come back on. Just to give right. Looking at the provision for the pay award for 2022-23, and that provision is 2.8 million. I understand that that was provided on the basis of a 1.5% increase in wages and salaries to local government staff. However, I understand that recently, very recently, that offer has been upped to 2% by COSLA. Now, that obviously has a significant additional cost effect. I work it out as to being the thick end of £1 million. Looking at the reserves that the convener of finance is retaining, I work out he's got about some £700,000. How is he going to pay that additional need for an extra £1 million, or thereby to meet wage costs, when he doesn't have that amount of uncommitted reserves left?
Mr. Lorimer, would you be able to advise Councillor King on that?
Mr. Lorimer, other than to confirm my figures, I want to hear from Councillor Salmond how he's going to find £1 million when he's only got £600,000 uncommitted.
Right, Councillor King, I have asked Mr. Lorimer to see if he could give you some.
I want an answer from Mr. Salmond.
Well, let me give let Mr. Salmond can then follow up. Mr. Lorimer, are you able to help in this?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, we'd anticipated this as a risk. We've referred to it in the background report. I think it's number 22 on page 199 of the combined papers, where we refer to the provision for pay, and as Councillor King says, a 1.5% increase is what's been provided for. That was based on our assumptions in our medium-term budget strategy back in November last year. As Councillor King mentions, the COSLA leaders agreed just on Friday past, actually, to make an offer of 2%. So that one has that risk has materialised for us. I do say within the background report, again referring to page 199 of the papers, that recognising that there is a risk there, if that risk does come to pass, then it would be necessary to identify compensating savings elsewhere in the council's budget to pay for these. These compensating savings will inevitably, I'm quoting from the report here, these compensating savings will inevitably have to include further reductions in staffing, since this is the council's largest costs. We'll need to deal with this pay issue, and remember the COSLA position at 2% is only an offer. That's still to be discussed and agreed and negotiated. So that is a position in time. We do still have a part of the thinking of putting aside money for in terms of reserves earmarked for inflation risks, was partly to recognise the risks on pay. In a worst case scenario, the reserves that we have set aside towards future years' budgets could also potentially be used on a one-off basis. But I need to be clear, pay award adds to our ongoing costs, and therefore it needs ongoing savings or ongoing additional funding to be affordable. And I think I've been very, very clear in the report, which summarises the financial context and the financial sustainability challenges, that pay is one of those costs that is very difficult for the council to self-fund. The 1.5% pay provision that we have made, if the view was to try and fund that entirely from council tax, it would need a nearly 5% increase in council tax to do that. So that gives us a sense of the scale of the challenge. But I hope through a combination of either compensating adjustments, as I've mentioned, or one-off reserves as a one-off solution in 22-23, those would be the measures that we would need to deploy to afford a higher level of council tax. But I really must emphasise just how challenging the pay position is for us, unless there is further funding available nationally. Thank you.
That's fair enough, Mr. Larimer. Okay. The situation is, if we're faced with this pay increase, we have to find the money almost immediately. Now, I'm looking at what the administration budget leaves in uncommitted reserves. It's a good bit less actually than 600,000. It's down about 510, 525. Whereas the SNP budget leaves 1.25 million in uncommitted reserves. Well, is it not true that this particular potential increase could wipe out all of the remaining uncommitted reserves as a short-term necessity before you can make other arrangements and other savings?
Okay, Councillor King, thanks very much for making the point, and I'm sure we'll decide upon that when we come to vote on the amendment or the motion. Okay, Councillor Speed.
Can you hear me?
Speed.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
apologies. I do seem to have problems. It was just a point of clarity with regards to the comparison sheet. On kind of 75.75, can I just get absolute assurances that it says toilet provision for all? Can I just get assurances that that indeed means changing places, which would be kind of in line with Councillor Salmon's motion?
Councillor Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as I've identified that I've explained in my speech, Councillor Speed, we are putting £100,000 into change in place toilets as a new pot of money. I'm happy for Mr. Lorimer to come back in and give you a verbal confirmation. If that's okay. Mr. Lorimer, can you just confirm to Councillor Speed, please?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Provost. Yes, indeed. I think it's just the language that's been used there, Councillor Speed, but that's the intention, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to clarity around the wording and language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Provost, I didn't know it was me next in the list. My notes are...
Well, you have your hand up, so I'm just...
but I can't tell who else has got their hand up. Right, I've got a couple of points, and I'm going to do one just now, and I'll need to come back to another one because I can't find it whilst I'm talking. One of the other questions I had, and it relates to 5L, and it's the early education and lifelong learning saving 7, and I'm just a bit concerned that this is the EIA that went along with the saving, and I'm really just a bit concerned about where impacts are seen and where they're not, because I can't imagine, yes, age, but I think there's other protected characteristics that are also disproportionately affected, disability being one, probably ethnicity and others, but the one that concerns me the most, and tying this whole thing together with the council plan, the finance plan, the workforce plan, etc., and the priorities for Angus in terms of reducing child poverty, reducing poverty in general. Why on earth are we focusing on taking a £260,000 saving on the basis that we're quite happy to accept for low paid workers in terms of the support for learning staff? We're happy to say we pay less than what we've been given from the Scottish Government. So the funding has been given to Angus, but we're quite happy to pay low wages. That just seems to go against the principles and the priorities that we're setting ourselves in the council plan. I just don't understand why we're doing that. Can I get an explanation from somebody as to why it's not been... It's on the basis as well why we've not seen a negativity for the protected characteristic of sex there, because predominantly it is women workers that are going to be affected by low wages.
Thanks for that. I'll ask Mrs. McIntosh. By the way, it's not always women workers. My son-in-law does that. Actually, is in that line of business. Mrs. McIntosh,
it does, but it's predominantly women, and it's great, and it would be great to see a mixed workforce, but it is predominantly women at the moment. Robin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hans. Mrs. McIntosh, would you be able to answer?
Yes, thanks for raising that point, Councillor Hans. I think it's important to stress that the budget efficiencies offered and proposed by the Education and Lifelong Learning Directorate had very, very careful consideration, both myself and colleagues in finance, great support there, and with our head teachers. And none of the savings are made lightly, and they're made in the wider context of our corporate ability to balance the budget. The money, the extra permanent funding for school staff, including support staff, that was provided by the government in August 2021, included the provision for 11 support staff. That was written in the letter from the government, and we have maintained that commitment for 11 support staff. So there is no reduction in the increase that we were asked to make. I am not happy or willing to accept that it's okay that we pay our support staff less than other local authorities. That was discussed this morning. However, to be realistic, that is the position that we're in at the moment. And any work that we do, we are doing work in the background to look at the numbers of staff, what we currently pay them, what the cost would be to pay them more, whether that would be possible at all, because it would have ramifications for other posts in the council perhaps, because there is an issue with retention of staff. And these people do great work in our schools, really excellent work They are integral to the support that we give to our children and our wider families. So please be assured that we are examining what we pay, whether it's realistic, whether it fits with the job outline as it is now, because these jobs evolve over time. Please be assured of that. I hope that answers your question. Oh, sorry, I'll go on to the EIA. I have to apologise, you're correct. We should have mentioned there about the sex, the gender issue, and perhaps some other issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you, Councillor Hans. Councillor Dunn.
Thanks, Provost. I don't know whether this question's Councillor Salmond or whether it's for Ian Lorimer. The 11 million that's on the capital plan that we're putting for the roads, well, in Mr Salmond's proposal, I just wanted to know, is that 11 million for Angus? Does that include the new places for everyone prospect, the dual carriageway in Arbroath? Does that 11 million, I know there's funding for that, but does that mean that Arbroath won't get any more money off of their normal roads because we're spending on? I just wanted to clarify that the 11 million, is separate, and what the difference is, because people will be asking that question. If we're spending 11 million on roads, they would like to know if Arbroath will suffer because we're getting a new dual carriageway. Could somebody answer that?
I'll take that one, Ronnie.
Yeah, if you could.
I'm just going to say that no, the new roads in Arbroath are a separate issue, and you should get your fair proportion of money for your roads maintenance mentioned. However, just to get Councillor Salmond to ratify that, I'll just ask.
Yeah, obviously with inflation and petrol going up and everything, the price is going to.
Councillor Salmond, would you agree with what I've just said?
Thank you, Provost. I think I made it quite clear in the budget speech. I thought my speech was laid out in quite a simplistic way that people would be able to understand it. So I did take.
Yeah, I think they just get 11 million roads. Yeah, if you could clarify.
Yeah, happily do that. So the final chunk of money in my budget is to deliver your project in Arbroath. Your project, well, I don't know if you're voting for it now, but I know you opposed it previously, but the money I'm putting in will deliver that chunk, and there is a procurement report coming to the 10th of March to deliver that active travel project. So that's one part. Second part, the 11 million is a totally separate pot of money for the whole of Angus to cover roads maintenance. And I thought I made that quite clear.
I was just making sure, because obviously prices are going to escalate, and I wouldn't want Arbroath just to have their cycleway, road dual carriageway done, and then said there's not enough money for the rest of the town. I want to make sure we've got enough cash in the pot. Obviously,
colleagues will have an opportunity on the 10th of March to proceed with your project in Arbroath, and it's funded. And there's a separate pot of money for roads maintenance, which is the 11 million 6-year plan. 3 million up front, so 3 million this year to kick off straight away.
And
Mr. Cochrane has plans ready to hit the ground of where that 3 million will be spent all around Angus.
And there's maintenance money for the next wee while as well on that. Yeah, for maintaining the roadways and everything. There's money for that as well.
I think that's exactly. And you said that Mr. Cochrane, Mr. Scott, and Dougie Hill et al. Will be hitting their ground running. So
that's great, because that's what the constituents want to know. They want to know if there's enough money for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Dunno.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I want to return to maybe a supplementary on the question that Councillor Devine asked, because we had a conversation between Mr. Salmond and Mrs. Lindsay, and she said that she was looking for a permanent staff member. Now, from my reading of the table that was provided, the comparison table, this £80,000 was one-off money from reserves. Can Mr. Lorimer clarify that?
Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, so the 80,000 is being provided on an ongoing basis. But in doing that, it means that there's a need to draw down a further sum from reserves to achieve a balanced budget. So that 80,000 being added as a permanent addition will if you like, go into the amount that needs to be caught up into future years to balance the budget. So the use of general fund reserve to balance the revenue budget and the administration's budget is 3.960 million, and that includes all of the other bits of the budget that go along with that. So it's permanently added, but because both budgets actually are relying on reserves to achieve balance, I guess there's a question about just how that would be funded into future years. But it is intended to be a permanent addition because it would involve employing a member of staff on a permanent full-time basis. I hope that helps.
Answer your question.
It sounds a bit iffy. It sounds a bit iffy to me, but yeah, I would have thought if it's a permanent position, we shouldn't be funding it on reserves. But that would be my thinking on that one.
Councillor Salmon.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned with the language there, Sir Duff, saying this as iffy after the Director of Finance has given him an assurance of how this is being funded, and it's being funded permanently moving forward. So, you know, as I said, Councillor Duff, I find that quite disrespectful to Mr. Lorimer.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we'll close that one down. Councillor MacDonald.
I find it quite funny that Councillor Salmon was quite disrespectful to Councillor Durno and then mentions about being disrespectful. You know, patronising comes to mind. I just want confirmation from Ian Lorimer, if I could, that what he said was, just so I understand it, if we vote for the administration budget, there is a very real chance that if the COSLA deal goes through, that we will have to lay off staff as Angus Council. And there's a there's a risk, there's a high risk of that happening. Is that what you said earlier, Mr. Lorimer?
Through you, Provost. Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah. Please answer.
Thank you. Yeah, what I was quoting from the background report, I think it's number 6222, which says if the pay award risk that we'd flagged in there does come to pass, then we would need to look at compensating savings. Now, whether those compensating savings are made during 22-23 will very much depend on looking at the options. We could potentially cover those on a one-off basis from reserves. But the reality is, if there is no additional funding, we will have to find the money from somewhere to pay for a higher pay level. And if that is the case, we would need to find compensating savings in the budget. And I think what I said was because staff costs are our largest cost, then it's difficult to see that staff reductions would not have to be part of that.
So essentially, by spending more on reserves again this year, we're going to find ourselves over the next couple of years in a bit of trouble, and it's going to be exacerbated by this potential circumstance that might happen that Alec King referred to so eloquently earlier. So there is not an option here.
Mr. Lorimer, do you want to reply?
Yeah, just point out, Provost, that both budget proposals today, there's not a great deal of difference between them, but both budget proposals would require a use of reserves to achieve a balanced budget of just under £4 million in the case of the administration's budget, and just over £4 million in the case of the SNP budget. The difference which Councillor King was referring to, I think, was that in the amendment there is a higher level of earmarking on a one-off basis for inflation risks of £725,000 more, which could be used towards that pay challenge. But these are all one-off solutions, and as I said earlier, an ongoing uplift to pay will require permanent solutions at some point. Hope that's helpful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lorimer. Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Going back to Councillor Hands again, you found your thing you were looking for?
Thank you, Provost. My question relates to item 5M, which is report 6622, I think. And it's relating to the capital strategies. And at paragraph 4.2, there's a whole number of local and national strategies raised. I'm just wondering, why is there no reference to carbon reduction or net zero? And I think I would like to tie this up with the comparison between the two capital budgets that are proposed today as well, because other than flood prevention projects, which were kind of reactive to climate change, there isn't anything at all in the administration budget that I remember reading that is actually trying to proactively address the future challenge. We've just had COP last year, and it's almost as if it didn't happen. So can I ask about the lack of zero carbon and net reduction strategies within the policy, within the paper itself, and also ask what the administration planned to do about meeting future challenges as well?
Okay, I see Mr. Lorimer got his hand up there, or is that a?
No, I was planning to come in if that's okay, Provost.
Okay, by all means.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hands makes a very good point in relation to the capital strategy and the table. It's on page 376 of the papers. I think that's an oversight on our part actually, Councillor Hands, that the council's CCAP is not mentioned there as one of the influences on our capital investment. So we'll build that in for future editions. I can't answer the second question. That's obviously a question for the administration to answer.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Mr. Lorimer. Councillor Salmon, do you want to reply at all, Councillor Hands?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Are there any other officers to reply? Okay, Councillor Hands, all I can say is you heard the explanation from Mr. Lorimer, which I think is very honest. And I do think there has been, money has been put into sort of recycling and stuff like that, which goes towards, carbon neutral in the long term. So it is there.
I can't believe the administration are silent on future climate. I'm speechless. I'm saying no more.
Well, I don't think so, but anyway. Councillor Brown. Okay, can't seem to contact Councillor Brown. I'll go into Councillor Fairweather. You're muted.
Thank you, Provost. Just a point of clarification. Cosley was mentioned regarding the pay negotiations. They are still ongoing. All leaders as well want a negotiation that we are underfunded. We continue to be underfunded by the Scottish Government, and the simple solution for this is that whatever is negotiated, the Scottish Government should be standing up and delivering that money, not local authorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, do you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Mine's is a comment, Provost. Do you want comments just now?
Hang on a minute. I'm just going to see. Are there any more questions? No more questions. Councillor Brown, carry on.
I would like to say on Councillor Duff's speech, he spoke about a revolving door, Angus alive. Now, my name was mentioned in the group of people. I spent 2 years on the shadow, 2+ years on the shadow board, then 4 years on the board. I certainly did not go out any revolving door. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Duff.
I actually got a question, Provost.
I thought I'd asked for questions. I thought there was no hand.
Okay, I'd like to go back and really a question for Councillor Salmon. We're back onto the favourite thorny topic of the A90 link road. In the capital plan 21-26, we have two sums of money, £116,000 and £500,000. And then outside that plan on 26-27, we have a £3.639 million. What is going on between these two sums of money? We've got a project here that has got serious problems. What exactly is happening here? You know, we've not got continuous expenditure. We've 116 and 500 in the next 5-year period. And then once that's ended, we put in another 3.639. None of these sums of money are remotely meeting the cost of doing this project. This plan doesn't seem to me to add up. I'd be interested to know what Mr. Salmond has to say about that. Councillor Salmond has to say about that.
Yeah, before I ask Councillor Salmond to reply, I thought Mr. Scott's sort of brief on the scenario, the question was asked by Councillor Bray was actually quite, he gave a good detail. However, I'll go now and ask Councillor Salmond.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Duff. I think you've been at most of the briefings I've been at as the local members on this project, so you have as much information as I do. Mr. Cochrane or Mr. Scott, to give us slightly more detailed information on this project.
Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Duff, and thank you, Councillor Salmond. I think we've stated before, in terms of where we are with this project, that we have indeed spent some considerable time and effort in trying to look through a solution for the connectivity of Montrose. And that started some considerable time ago when the Lawrence Kirk Junction was indeed not committed by Scottish Government. And we've continued with the project in terms of looking how we can benefit the economic development of Montrose. I think there's a number of issues that we've come across as we've started that study, which, as been alluded to this afternoon, has created a number of issues as we've gone forward. And what we have recommended as officers is that we pause the project whilst we do further option appraisal. And indeed that complies with what Councillor Duff is suggesting. And then we have left the financial plan as it was until we've done that work. That's the situation that we've left it as. I hope that helps members.
Thank you very much.
Provost, can I just go back quickly? All right. Yeah, earlier in my speech, I referred to discussions I'd had with Scottish Government ministers earlier on this year. I raised this project with them at that point as well about funding from the Scottish Government. So we have been asked to put together some information to present to the Scottish Government and offering that together. So that will be moving forward for further discussions with the Scottish Government. I hope that's helpful information.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Salmond. Okay, Councillor Duff, thank you. Councillor Nicholl, are we on to comments? That was a question here. Councillor Nicholl, comments? We're on to comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Provost. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Salmond on bringing this budget before us today. In these hard times of high inflation and unnecessary, very destructive cuts to all the Scottish Council budgets by the SNP-run government at Holyrood, there will be very few councils able to produce a balanced budget without passing the burden on to the public in their area. In this budget, I am pleased to see in Brechin we are to receive £100,000 for a new play park area. This will be appreciated and much needed great asset in Brechin. Finally, I support this budget brought forward by Councillor Salmond and the administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. It's a comment and some clarification. Just to start, I think it was a real shame that Councillor Duff decided to concentrate on mudslinging, right, and not what's important to the people in Angus, and that's a budget that's sustainable and beneficial for all the residents in Angus. Just to clarify, Lochside Leisure Centre, may I point out, it was the SNP administration who intimated it was surplus to to requirements. When Forfar Leisure Centre started and was closed, it was an SNP administration. Can I also go to roads? And I was in administration. It was then called the Angus Alliance, but they put in record amounts into into the roads maintenance budget. And if I remember rightly, it moved us steadily up the table, the Scottish table, for good roads. I think we went from, I think it was about 20.
Point of order, Provost. Point of order, Provost.
Anyway, I will continue because that's not a point of order. I'm making a clarification and a comment, Provost.
I'd like to ask the question. I'd like to ask the question of the Provost. It's a simple question, David. Don't get too. Provost. You stated. You
finished.
Provost. You stated. Provost.
Comment, please do.
No, but it's a point of order, Provost. Point of order, Provost. Provost, can you at least let me say my piece? You did say, Provost, that if we went back over history in the past, you would stop the situation right away. And you have not done this right away. That's what that's all I'm trying to do, is keep this as you promised that you would say. You said if we went back over old stuff, we'd be slammed down. So you will not slam me down when I go over old stuff from the past as well then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boyd.
Provost, I will simply continue with my comments. It's been mentioned about climate emergency. Well, what part of recycling is not the climate emergency? This is an award-winning council. But I do commend Councillor Boyd and Councillor Cheap that they come back year after year wanting to bring back general waste into Carnoustie. That's their prerogative. It is their area, but they've got to remember there is a climate emergency. We are now #1 in Scotland for recycling. It is a big issue for youngsters today, and it's certainly something us older people should be taking cognizance of. Going to the council freeze, I couldn't quite understand what Councillor Whiteside was suggesting. We have not frozen the council tax. Perhaps she wasn't listening to what was said by Councillor Salmond in his budget speech. And my final comment is, again, we have proved, working with our officers, this is an award-winning council. This is not an administration of sound bites, but it is one of action. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost. And before to raise, I'll just reassure Councillor Fairweather I was listening. I was merely pointing out that because of the pressures we all faced, a council freeze would have been irresponsible. I did not say that the administration had proposed a council tax freeze. Also, wonder if he's very clear on the actual risks of climate emergency, because recycling alone will not be enough to sort it out, unfortunately. And I'd also like to correct Councillor Nicholl, who stated it would had a drop in funding, and we heard earlier we actually had £23 million extra in revenue spending. But actually, the point I was was the one of the lines in the budget comparison that we kindly got sent, line 108, the special repayment strategy, and the sum under the administration budget is 1.882 million.
And I believe, and I would like Mr Lorimer to confirm this, I presume it's another question that Councillor Salmond won't know the answer to. I would like Mr Lorimer to confirm if this will actually result in an increase in capital finance costs going forward. Thank you.
Right, thanks very much, Councillor Whiteside. We're actually past questions now, but I'll allow that and I'll ask Mr Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, so as Councillor Whiteside is lighting from the comparison paper, the funding of the capital programme from the administration's does require a deferral of some of the special repayments that we have been making. That will have an impact in terms of our overall borrowing position, but that's a necessary measure in terms of delivering the investment in roads. So although it will impact on our capital financing costs in that regard, if we do make those repairs to roads in time, then we would hope that I think somebody earlier on the call mentioned a stitch in time, then that might be the other side of that. But yeah, certainly it would impact on our capital financing costs in the short term, because it's only for a couple of years that would apply.
Okay, Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Whiteside. Thanks, Councillor Laurie.
Yep, thank you, Provost. I've listened to and examined the budget proposals with great interest today, and while I think that Councillor Duff in his speech raised some valid criticisms of the administration's conduct and behaviour over the past few years, I am mindful that I have to cast my vote on which budget I believe best serves the people of Angus today. So first of all, I'm pleased to see that both budgets include £100,000 for changing places toilet provision. This is really important, and there's no doubt in my mind at all that were it not for the constant lobbying of Councillor Speed, this would not be so firmly on the table today, so her efforts should really be commended. I'd also like to thank the finance convener for reaching out to the non-aligned councillors and taking on board our asks. I'm pleased that we've managed to secure additional funding for social work support services, including respite and mental health support for young people. With the current state of the world, it feels like we're lurching from crisis to crisis, and the mental health and well-being of our most vulnerable young people needs safeguarded more than ever. That's been my priority in trying to influence this budget, and the additional investment that we've secured is very welcome indeed. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Speed.
Yep. Thank you, Provost. Yeah, there are many areas of this budget that I'd like to draw out and comment on. However, I'll highlight particular areas that have been of ongoing interest to me due to the challenges that many of our children and families experience, and that support some of our council's key priorities. Firstly, I'm pleased that my concerns and requests and discussions with regards to the budget, in particular with regards to Catherine Lindsay and her team's remit, have been listened to, and I welcome the additional £80,000 that will support the Children with Disabilities team, respite and mental health and wellbeing of all our children and young people. Having campaigned and pleaded hard for Angus Council to build a robust network of changing places prior to and during my current time in Council, I'm absolutely delighted that there is now cross-party support and recognition of the importance of changing places within today's society. Today feels like a major breakthrough in changing the hearts and minds of those I have sat alongside throughout my term. Although I have had many successes, such as ensuring all our new schools and many community projects across Angus install these vital facilities, this hasn't been an easy task. In fact, at times, I have quite literally been banging my head against the toilet door. And both admin and opposition have pulled the plug on a number of occasions. However, today I thank you, colleagues. I'm overjoyed my vision has finally been realised, and now Angus Council has the opportunity and means to build an even stronger network of changing places, uphold human rights and meet the most basic needs of all our citizens, and indeed help ensure that Angus is firmly on the map as an accessible and inclusive destination for all. Thank you.
The Provost just left.
It might be the 3 hours, David.
He was having problems with his machine.
Does the Deputy Provost want to step in?
I was just about to say that till Ronnie comes back. Councillor Cheap, I think you're next. Your hands. You're at number 1.
Thanks, Councillor Follingham. As long as I don't get cut off by the 3 hour rule. I think.
Okay, sorry.
There he is.
Back on track. So, Councillor Speed, I think you were. Sorry, Councillor Cheap, I think you were next.
I am. Thank you. I just heard a lot.
Councillor Cheap, sorry to interrupt. Before you speak, we've now reached the 3 hour limit. Now, we could either have a break for 10 minutes, or do you wish us to proceed? So I move that we proceed with the meeting. Minded, please say so. Are we all agreed that we continue?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Chapman. Sorry about the technical issue there.
No, it's quite understandable. We've heard a lot this afternoon from both the administration, Provost, and from the SNP. So I hope you'd like to give a little bit of time to the non-aligned members to have their say. First of all, I'm delighted to hear Councillor Fairweather commending Councillor Boyd and I for wanting general waste back in South Angus. That's really good to hear. I think from my point of view, with Angus Council facing the financial difficulties that both the administration and the SNP have pre-publicised, the level of prudence shown by both in setting the level of council tax, I think, flies in the face of this. Whether it's 2.95% or 3%, there really is no merit or kudos in our council having the second lowest council tax position when you're risking bankrupting the council by draining of its reserves. All you're doing is kicking the can down the road and passing the buck to a future administration. With the level of current inflation that we are facing at the moment, and by we I mean Angus Council is facing, is way in excess of 5%. To increase council tax by 2.95% or 3% just doesn't do it for me as far as I'm concerned. You know, whether it's 68.5 pence per week, or it's, you know, if I would have gone perhaps for 5% and would have been £1.16 a week. In the whole shape of things, it's very, very small, and our electorate want the money spent that will deliver the services, their core services. So I'm a bit disappointed with that. I do, and well done, Councillor King, for bringing up that point about the inflation. We all know that, I'm sure that wage inflation will go beyond that report that's in the budget. So I do have a concern about that as well. I do share the SNP's concern on the A90 link road. This is unaffordable. I can't see it going ahead, and no further funds should be poured down that particular drain. I welcome, however, the administration's commitment of £11 million to roads maintenance. I have long been an advocate for council funds to be used first and foremost to core council services, and roads and pavements are fundamental to this. So that's really important for me. As a final comment, yet again, we've seen this afternoon the applying of one rule for one and not the other. Councillor Salmon is allowed plenty of time to go on about the administration's supposed achievements over the last 5 years, but the Provost doesn't permit the Councillor Duff to review the same period. Perhaps this is an example why we need a truly independent Provost after the election in May. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap. And Councillor Duff could have spent as long as he wanted. I wouldn't have stopped him. It was just that some of the content of Councillor Duff's speech has nothing to do with the budget. Hence, that's why I stepped in. If Councillor Duff had wanted to speak on the budget for an hour, I would not have stopped him. But
neither was Councillor Salmon's, Provost. A lot of it was historical as well.
I don't think so. Anyway, thank you for that. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, Provost, I respectfully disagree with your comment there as well. I think they were much of a much, and we've seen it over the course. But that's how we see it. I'm really worried about this following this debate, because for me, there's only one budget is actually competent, really. There's only one budget covers the reserves of the COSLA deal. Councillor Fairweather can say that he doesn't think that the council should pay for it. Well, that's here nor there. It has to. So, you know, we literally, if anybody chooses to vote for the administration budget in this current forum, it's setting itself up for, from what I understand, from what Ian Lorimer said, and from what Councillor King drew out, it's setting us up for an incredibly difficult position. Just going immediately forward. And then what about whoever takes the administration? Who's taking the administration and having to deal with the excess and reserve spend from the administration's proposals this time round? I cannot see how the administration budget can be labelled prudent. I cannot see how the administration budget can be labelled sensible for going forward. And we need to protect the people of Angus's services now. Now, I understand what Councillor Cheap's just said there about the council tax increase. I think this is something that, you know, the cost of living issues we've got just now and everything that's going on, it's a difficult one to juggle with. But we've got to be realistic, and what any future administration is going to have to look at what it's doing going forward with in terms of the council tax. Whether that's, you know, what options get going, we don't know what future budgets are going to be. It strikes me that the two budgets, one is a budget, the SNP budget is the sort of budget that's been put together with the ambition to lead this council. The administration budget's been put together hoping to hang on to power. That's the way I see these two budgets. And I cannot understand how, given the way this debate has gone today, anybody within this virtual chamber can look at the administration's budget and potentially put the council into greater jeopardy by voting for it. And I think that's a very key message. There is potentially more harm coming to this council as a result of this administration's budget. That's my take on it. I'd implore everybody to vote for the SNP budget. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Well, both budgets were proved competent by our finance officers, so you know that argument doesn't work. But we'll find out when we come to the vote.
Wait a minute.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Hans. Comment.
Hans is still on mute.
No, that's fine. Yeah, Provost, I would just like to comment on the £80,000 in the budget. And again, it wasn't in the papers. It's just that rabbit out the hat. But it saddens me that we've politicised a social worker for disabled children. You know, I think it's more important than that. And what I can't understand, I agree with what it's been principled, and I won't be interrupted either from Councillor Salmon. You're going to support my budget. That was just rude. However, the social worker for children, disabled children, the respite, the additional respite care, and also the mental health services, they're all actually really important. Why in heaven's name were they not actually in the ask from children and families and from education and lifelong learning in their budget proposals? Why wasn't that core in the paper? I just cannot understand how this has been allowed to be politicised today. And what we cannot do is say, OK, we've got your funding for a year, and disabled families across Angus will think, OK, my child's going to be supported, and then all of a sudden, you know, because there's been extra money taken out the capital budget, and in future years, there's more money needing to be taken from the revenue budget in order to borrow additional monies later on. Who's going to suffer? Because all too often it does end up being children with disabilities that do suffer. Years ago, we had loads of savings taken place from additional support for learning. There's been lots of savings across Angus over the years where disabled children have suffered. So this really, really angers me today. I'm really, really disappointed that this has been allowed to be politicised in this way. It should have been a really sensible ask, and everybody should have been able to see that ask, because we're not going to, if we were able to, we would not go against this proposal. However, because of the way it's been presented today, you know, it has been politicised, and That's wrong. It shouldn't have happened that way. In terms of Councillor Whiteside's comments earlier on about recycling and not being enough, and I totally agree with her on that, because if this administration is going to focus on its environmental measures and actually collecting additional waste that people have and recycle it, surely to God the important part is we shouldn't be using all these additional things in the first instance. It's just bonkers that that's the priority. The other thing is as well, looking at the comparisons and looking at what we've seen in terms of the revenue budget, the capital budget, I can't help but thinking there's almost like a Gordon Brown note coming here for the future administration in May. Sorry, but we've spent all the money. This is utterly irresponsible. There is only one option today, and that's to look at a sensible budget and support the SNP budget.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Hange. Councillor Boyd.
Spot on, Councillor Hands. You're quite right at the start about the rudeness, but the rudeness has been full with arrogance and disrespectful comments. And you're concluding one is absolutely quite right about that. But we've got to remember, Councillor Salmon nearly broke the bank with a £12 million swimming pool 10 years ago, and now he's about to break the bank again with an irresponsible budget in 2022. And the electorate will not forgive him for it either. But that leads on to the disrespectful comments that were made. One of the first ones from Councillor Salmons, where he said I had wrote him a grumpy email. I have the email in front of me. Dear Mark, thanks for your kind invite, but as I'm still on the non-administration group, forced by your predecessor and administration voting for this too, I can get information reports that I need from senior officers without your help.
Councillor Boyd, that is nothing to do with it. So
it is because it's your administration, Councillor Proctor. It's your administration that has caused this us and them politics that has gone on for over 20 years within Angus Council, and it's no wonder people don't want to come out and vote because of the pathetic way that Angus Alliance
Point of order, Provost. Can you tell Councillor Boyd to be quiet, please?
So, I'll now continue with the rest of the comments I was wanting today. It's all about trust. All about trust. I'm sticking to the budget. It's all about trust. Okay. So okay. But is car parking still historic? Because you allowed other people to go on about how wonderful they're doing with the car parking charge.
Well, no, I mean, car parking was brought up in the budget today.
So I can bring up that. So therefore, Councillor Proctor, back to what I was trying to say, it's all about trust. When I went up to Montrose to hear about the car parking charges fiasco, I remember a Montrose businessman stating that if a man that can't run his own business, how on earth could he run a council? And I wonder which Montrose council that was directed at. Right, we'll now move on to other things within the budget. Page 413. I'm on to the budget, Ronnie.
That is absolutely shocking.
We're on to the budget, Ronnie.
You are being disrespectful. Okay,
I think I've had a lot of disrespectful and marginalisation thrown at me for the last 11 years of being a councillor, when I'm actually just doing the job of trying to look after the constituents that I represent. Anyway, back to page 413, and we had certain rabbits out of the hat. I can see that there's 250,000 is being spent, what I call the sticking plaster of Forfar Recycling Centre. Again, why are we needing to spend another $250,000 after spending $500,000 on that site? And that will only come at the expense of your recycling centre, Councillor Proctor, and the recycling centre in Brechin. and of course, Carnoustie and one of the other things that were in that. But thank you very much to Councillor Whiteside for clarifying, but not having to bring rabbits out of the hat to do it, but clarifying that the other things that were in that budget, that were in the budget papers that I have always been party to, that you're going to find money and help for Carnoustie and Monteith to make sure that we get the Links Parade monies sorted out and the Monteith Seaway. So I've always voted for what's best for my constituents. Always. In the 11 years I've done this, always what's best for my constituents. And therefore, I will be voting with that. Back to Councillor Cheap's comments. You're quite right. Thank you very much for thinking that it was very good for us to try and bring back a rubbish dump in Carnoustie, because we were #1 before you took office, Councillor Fairweather. You did nothing in the 5 years. In fact, it's gone up 1.19%. But you and your administration have caused nothing but division and angst throughout Angus of those that have and those that haven't. And that's Kirry, Brechin, Carnoustie and Monteith as well. You took over with us when you took over. When you're now leader, that you left the administration because, and I quote,
right, come on,
the admin fell at the first hurdle.
Provost, this has got nothing to do with the budget. Point of order, Provost. Can Councillor Boyd, when there's a point of order, have respect, and he's supposed to stay quiet. Right? The point of order is this has nothing to do with the budget. I will not go into the history of the recycling centres because you've got your facts wrong. I don't. Provost.
The facts are in the courier, Councillor.
Councillor Fairweather, I agree with your point of order. And Councillor Boyd, if you remember, in 2017, there were going to be only 3 recycling centres in Angus. But let's get back and let's get on track and deal with the budget and not start dealing with.
So you're allowed to go back over history and I'm not. You're allowed to go back over history and I'm not. So I'll just finish off. And it is to do with waste management, because you all mentioned this. What you will be remembered for the last 5 years, that the first waste management strike in Angus Council's history and 2 standards commissions investigations going on was brought under your administration. Thank you.
Can I have a point of order, Provost? You're incorrect. If you look at the community 2016, the previous administration proposed 5 recycling centres, not 3. This is an error that Councillor Fairweather made, and I had to correct him. It was 5, not 3.
Thank you, but I remember it was 3 as well. Anyway, it's history.
Well, you're incorrect.
Let's get on. Councillor Brace.
Well, thanks, Provost. But I have to say, it's not history. It's in the paper, as Councillor Duff has just pointed out.
Get your facts right.
That's the correct version.
I'm talking
not
about
what you think and not what Councillor Fairweather thinks. Now, I'll just go on. I've got a comment to make here, and very briefly, because I don't want to labour this point, but Councillor Fairweather is awful quick to sling mud at the Scottish Government. But we all know where the real root of the problems are, and it's Westminster, Tory, austerity, his Boris boy buddies. I want to just make a quick comment about the early years learning, which Councillor Whiteside so eloquently spoke about earlier. The countries that sit at the top of every league table of health and happiness put great store into early years learning. They know it works, and they know its value because they've proved it. And they've proved it in a fairer and equal society, and they've proved it with lower prison populations, and they've proved it by reducing the attainment gap. And more basic benefits, they've proved it by less dogfouling and less littering. I think there are some, certainly not all, but there are some members of the current administration who seem to take a very cynical view about the value of early years learning, but certainly the SNP group put great store in it. And I think that I'll confine my comments to that because we've had enough mudslinging in either direction. But as far as Councillor Cheap's comments, I would wholeheartedly agree with him and pretty much everything he said. We went for 3%. Maybe it should have been higher considering what's coming, but we're sticking with 3%. And it might have to get higher. We know that, and we'll face up to that if we're in administration. You can count on that. We'll not shirk from it like this coalition of chaos have done from day one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Brace. Councillor Moore.
Listen to all this mudslinging and insulting each other and, trying to shift blame for this, that and the other, and I'm fed up. I move to Standing Order 18.1, the question now be put.
Standing Order, we're talking about curtailing debate, and those who, where have you got a signature for that, Councillor Moore?
Yes, Provost, I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whiteside.
Provost, I think it's just important.
Sorry, because of fair weather.
Provost, I think it's just important that members understand that the procedural motion, it's in terms of Standing Order 18.1. So it's a procedural motion. There'll be no amendment and shall be put to the vote without debate. And the motion is to close the debate by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Fairweather. Members are asked to vote yes. That means we will close the debate, or no debate will remain, will continue. Provost?
Yes.
Deputy Provost?
Yes.
Councillor Bell?
Amendment. Oh, sorry, I'm here and my mic's not working very well.
That's okay, Councillor Bell.
It's yes or no, Councillor Bell.
Oh, yes, to that, to Moore's amendment.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Bell. Just clarify, is it a yes or a no?
Yes. Yes, it's a yes. I'm voting for Councillor Moore's suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so.
Councillor Boyd?
Yes.
Councillor Brace?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Cheap?
No, I hate having debate stifled.
Councillor Devine?
Yes.
Councillor Duff?
Yes.
Councillor Darno?
Yes.
Councillor Fairweather?
Yes.
Councillor Hand?
Millie, come on.
The democracy and debate should be allowed to continue.
That's a no.
Yeah, sorry, is that a no?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor King?
Councillor King?
Yeah, I beg your pardon, mic switched off. Yes.
Councillor Laurie?
They're all arguing, they had their hands up to speak.
No.
And they're all voting yes to stop it now.
Councillor Lumgear?
Yes.
Councillor McMillan Douglas?
Yes.
Councillor MacDonald?
No.
Councillor McLaren?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Mack?
No, there's some of us that wanted to put points and haven't had an opportunity yet, so I definitely vote no.
Councillor Nicholl?
Yes.
Councillor Salmond?
Yes.
Councillor Speed?
No.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Sturrock?
Okay, we'll pick him up. He was there earlier on.
Councillor Sturrock?
Councillor Sturrock?
Provost, I'll come back. Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Wan?
Yes.
Councillor Whiteside?
No, it's very undemocratic to stifle debate like this.
Could I just go back to see if Councillor Sturrock is there? No, Provost, and we have 19 votes to 7.
Okay. Right. So.
Yes, Provost, that the motion to close debate has been successful. Was 3 to Councillor Salmon to sum up as the motion, and then we'll proceed to the vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Salmon, 3 minutes to sum up, and then we go to vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Provost. I'm not really going to say too much. I think it's all been said. I think the best thing we're going to do is to head to the vote. But so first, I'd like to thank the Chief Executive, Deputy Chief Executive, all Council Directors and the Finance team and members of the PBSG for all the hard work and the months of work that's actually going on behind the scenes to put together the budget today. But I'm going to single out the Director of Finance, Ian Lorimer, and his Finance team as the real stars of today's budget. While we create a strategy, it's really the officers that deliver all the paperwork and all the numbers that's behind this today. So, and I know firsthand the amount of work that Ian and his team have actually put in. So a big thanks to them. I'd also like to thank Councillor Duff for bringing an alternative budget, and to all colleagues for the debate today. As I say, I've spoken for 35 minutes earlier on, so I feel I don't really need to say very much. But I believe the administration budget is balanced, being signed off by the Director of Finance, regardless of what's been said by some colleagues today. It protects our vital services while investing more in roads, children, play parks, toilets, and so much more. I believe we've arrived at a fair council tax rise at 2.95, which balances all the competing issues and allows my successor to begin planning for the 2023 budget with a strong reserves position of £8.75 million. In creating my budget, and we'll get a laugh here, in creating my budget, I've tried to stay out of the political arena and focus on the facts. Well, I think I have. I don't think I've made any criticisms of UK or Scottish government. I've dealt with the facts, I've dealt with the figures, which I think is a fair thing to do. So I really ask colleagues to unite and deliver a budget for the people of Angus and support this, because this is the best budget for the people of Angus. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Salmon.
Go to the vote.
Yeah, we're trying to just get hold of a couple of colleagues that have gone. No. Okay.
Provost, the motion by Councillor Salmon, seconded by Councillor Macmillan Douglas, is as per the paper circulated titled Administration Budget Motion. The amendment by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Whiteside, is as per the paper circulated entitled SNP Budget Amendment. The terms of both have been posted on the Council's website for the public to view. Please vote motion or amendment.
Motion.
Thank you.
Oh dear. Have we lost sound?
No, I don't think so.
The Provost is muted.
Ronnie, you're muted.
We can't see here, Councillor Bell.
No, it's okay.
I didn't hear. I'll vote amendment. Right, thank you. I told you I was having problems with my AV stuff.
Hello?
Provost, you're muted again.
Provost, you're muted and Senator Forsyth is muted. We're not hearing or asking for people to vote.
Okay, we've got it.
Councillor Boyd.
Amendment.
Councillor Braze.
Amendment.
Councillor Brown.
Motion.
Councillor Cheap.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Amendment.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Journal.
Amendment.
Councillor Fairweather.
Motion.
Councillor Hands.
And I'd like my dissent recorded, please.
Is it amendment? I mean amendment, okay.
Councillor King,
Amendment.
Councillor Laurie,
Motion.
Councillor Lumgear,
Motion.
Councillor McMillan Douglas,
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald,
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren,
Motion.
Councillor Moore,
Motion.
Councillor Miles, Councillor Miles,
Yeah, I was waiting for my name. Motion for me.
Councillor Nicholl,
Motion.
Councillor Salmond,
Motion.
Councillor Speed,
Councillor Speed.
Councillor Speed. I'll come back to Councillor Speed. Councillor Stewart,
Motion.
Councillor Sturrock,
Councillor Sturrock is having problems with his mic. He has sent me a text saying vote for motion. Do you want to phone him?
Just if you can, if you
That's okay.
yeah, no.
Councillor Sturrock vote for the motion. Councillor Wan,
Motion.
Councillor Whiteside,
Amendment.
Councillor Speed,
Motion.
Okay.
the motion is carried by 17 votes to 10.
Okay, colleagues, there we go. Thank you very much for your perseverance.
Oh God, I'm not going to get this sorted out.
No, not long to the 4th of May, David. Bye-bye, everyone.
I'm
Bye-bye.
really sorry
Bye.
the computer has been...
Yeah,
thrown
thanks,
on.
Provost, wherever you are.
Just
Bye,
thank you all.
everyone. See you next
Very,
week.
very long and heated
Bye.
debate, but good debate. And thank you all for your attendance. And thank you for your support about Ukraine. Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Provost. Bye.
Provost.